of the Zoning Board of Adjustment to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Oh, is he still here?
Here.
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 Here. Okay. This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, and proper notice has been given. Opening testimony on any given case shall be presented by the applicant, to be followed by township staff, and then open to the public. This procedure may be reversed at the discretion of the board chair upon staff request. This evening, we have 3 use variances. We're only going to have 6 board members this evening. Is any of the 3 applicants uncomfortable with that, or are you comfortable going forward with 6?
Mr. Johnson, if everyone can't feel comfortable with going forward.
Okay, that's one. The other one is, which one was that?
The third application?
Okay, and EPPK, are they here?
Yes, we're here.
Are you comfortable with 6?
Yes.
Okay. Also, I understand there was a flyer that was passed out this earlier today or yesterday in the Cornell Heights section that the Synergy application was going to be held this evening. Heard this evening that is not true. They're not scheduled, so if anyone came in to hear the Synergy application, my apologies, but you can always check by calling the office what the agenda is, and I believe the agenda is also on the Township website. So I just wanted to make that announcement for anyone that may or may not be here for that reason. First item for tonight is the adoption of the 2019 Zoning Board of Adjustment Annual Report, which we have. I'll move that we accept the annual report.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the adoption of the 2019 report, the Zoning Board of Adjustment Annual Report.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Zadworny moved, Eliana second. Mr. Kokenauer?
Yes.
Mr. Zadworny?
Yes?
Eliana?
Yes.
Mr. Shermer?
Yes.
Mr. Gerstenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, we will go through the 5 resolutions of memorialization. The first one is application number 17-06-022, type was business owner applicant John and Ellen Maziarz. Can I have a motion to accept the resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution of memorialization for application number 17-06-022, applicant John and Helen Maziarz. Second.
Mr. Kokenauer moved. Mr. Harrison second. Mr. Kokenauer?
Yes.
Mr. Zadworny?
Yes?
Ms. Shermer?
Yes.
Mr. Gerstenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
So moved.
Application number 19-11-045, type business owner applicant PSE&G.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move for the application number 19-11-045 for approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Mr. Zadworny moved. Ms. Shermer second. Mr. Kokenauer?
Yes.
Mr. Zadworny?
Yes?
Yes.
Mr. Gerstenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
So moved.
Number 3, application number 19-12-047, type is a homeowner, owner applicant is John Sangillo.
I'd like to move application number 19-12-047 towards resolution.
Second.
Mr. Kokenauer, Mr. Gerstenberg moved. Mr. Kokenauer second. Mr. Kokenauer?
Yes.
Mr. Zadworny?
Yes?
Ms. Shermer?
Yes.
Mr. Gerstenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
So moved.
Number 4, application 19-12-053 is type is homeowner, the owner applicant is Gregory Wanzicki.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the resolution of memorialization for application number 19-12-053 for the applicant Gregory Wanzicki.
Second.
Mr. Pocono moved, Mr. Gerstenberg second. Mr. Pocono?
Yes.
Mr. Zalorni?
Yes.
Ms. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Gerstenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
So moved.
And the last one, application number 20-01-002, type homeowner, owner applicant John Goff.
I'd like to move application number 20-01-002 to a resolution of memorialization.
Second.
Go ahead, Barry.
Mr. Gerstenberg moved, Mr. Zalorni second. Mr. Pocono?
Yes.
Mr. Zalorni?
Yes.
Ms. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Gerstenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, next item is application 15-08, 15, that's like 5 years old. -041, type business owner applicant Bergies. We received a letter from Bergies Realty requesting an extension of time, so at this time, we will carry this item to April? Yes, to the April meeting. Okay. All righty. Now we will move on with our new applications. The first one is application number 18-06-023, type business owner applicant Hubert Levia. Proposal is expanding a non-conforming 3-unit building, adding a second floor. The applicant's requesting a use variance from floodplain relief, variance relief from front yard setback, waiver of driveway standards. The location is 231 Camp Avenue, map 131, section 2048, lot 36, the R10 zone. The board must act by April 10th, 2020. Do we have jurisdiction?
Yes, the applicant has provided notice, and the application has been deemed complete.
And is I saw the applicant gentleman stood earlier.
My name is Harvey Johnson. I'm a partner in the law firm of Joy Morris, and it's our privilege to represent the applicant here tonight. The chairman has outlined the variances and waivers that we need, and we're going to call 4 witnesses, and I don't know if you want to swear them all in at the same time.
Yeah, I think that would be best. Let's swear all 4 in at once, and that way, and then they can, as questions pop up, they'll...
Architect Lionel Strickland.
Let's have all 4 come forward. Are we missing somebody?
We're going to bring up the owner to take the applicant.
All right, yeah, let's have everybody come forward. I'll swear them all in and get your name, and, all right, if you could all raise your right hand, you swear that the testimony about to give tonight is the truth, so help you God.
I do.
And starting from left to right, let's have the name and your relationship to the application.
James Miller, professional planner.
Lionel Scriven, architect, that's S-C-R-I-V-E-N.
S-C-R-I-B...
IV.
I-V.
I-V-E-N.
I'm sorry. And you're the architect.
Uzo Aherakwe, the professional engineer. First name is Uzo, it's spelled U-Z-O. Last name is Aherakwe, it's spelled A-H-I-A-R-A-K-W-E.
Okay.
And you're a professional engineer.
Yeah. Yes.
And lastly,
Hi, my name is Hubert. I'm the owner of the property, and I want to try to make a good with this.
you're the owner applicant of 231 Camp Avenue. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call the architect, Mr. Scriven.
Okay. He needs to qualify him, because I don't know Mr. Scriven. This is...
I think you have these plans before you in your package. We're going to go.
If you would, please just qualify your witness.
Sure. Scriven, could you please describe to the board your educational background?
Yes, please.
Okay, I have a 5-year professional degree, Bachelor of Architecture, class of 1996. 86, excuse me.
I was gonna say,
Do you operate your own architectural firm?
Yes, I do.
Have you ever testified before the zoning board or planning board in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I have.
we accept your witness.
Thank you very much. Were you employed to do the architectural drawings for this particular building, 231 Camp Avenue?
Yes.
Could you please tell us what you plan to do there for the architectural drawings?
I didn't know they had it up here, okay. All right, okay. What the owner intends to do is he has an existing 3-unit apartment building in which he wants to improve upon, keeping the same footprint that already exists and basically building up to get more headroom as well as making alterations to the interior of the building.
So does he already have a license from the Township of Hamilton to have a 3-bedroom apartment there?
I would assume so.
All right. Could you tell us, you just go through the drawing and explain to the board what we're going to do there.
Okay, the first drawing here is existing conditions. As I stated just a few minutes ago, the building footprint does not change. Okay, this illustrates the existing footprint and the proposed alterations where the building doesn't change. Can you zoom down? Okay. Right here, what you see is the existing conditions. Once again, where basically what we want to do is build up, changing the roof lines as well as a complete second story on top of the existing.
Could you explain the driveway, please?
Okay, I'll start with, once again, the existing driveway. On the left facing the building is a stone driveway, and on the right is a paved asphalt driveway. Once again, those would not change. In terms of site improvements, if you will, but once again, alterations to the building, he would change this, scroll down. There is an existing porch that leads to, that leads to an existing apartment on the second floor. This would be a new set of covered stairs in the exact same location of the existing stairs now.
So he would repair the existing chairs and put a canopy on top, is that correct?
Yes.
Would you also be putting at the request of the township a sidewalk and apron for the driveway?
Yes, that's around here, site improvements, putting in a sidewalk and aprons for the entry to both parking places, if you scroll up, those details are provided right here to meet the standards of the township.
Does the board have any questions?
Questions? Mr. Zadworny?
I understand the driveway to the left. That leads to the back of the property where there appears to be a garage there.
No, I'm facing the building, you're talking about the one to the right?
As you face the building,
Right,
the driveway to your left.
to the left,
If you
right.
follow that all the way to the back,
Mhm.
there is a garage there.
Okay,
Is that correct?
No, sir.
So what's over there? There is something there.
We'll bring the owner up if you don't mind. Let the owner.
I believe he's talking about that square in the back right corner, Barry?
That's
Yeah.
No, that's.
No, on the, not the picture, all the way to the back, upper right corner there.
Oh, that's a shed.
Okay.
That's an existing shed.
All right. Is that what it is? Yeah, very much smaller. Any other questions from the board?
Any board members have
Does
questions
the
for the
owner,
applicant?
does the owner to the property reside there?
Yes.
Because I noticed when I drove by there, the property is identified 231A Camp, and then on the second floor is 231C Camp. Is there a 231B?
It's only 231, the apartments are A, is that correct?
Yeah, it's like 3 units, so one is the first, the front, and then the second one, and the top, like up over, and the third is behind that.
Presently zoned now by the Hamilton presently provided by the Hamilton approval process. There's a three-bedroom, he has 3 apartments in the building. He is enlarging the apartments by building upwards but not outwards.
So in effect, you will be erecting a 3-story building. Is that
No,
correct?
It will be a 2-story building, but, he's going to add to the 2nd floor, but it will remain a 3-bedroom apartment building. It will not change from that. The apartments will just be bigger.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Weber?
Yes, sir.
If I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Cook.
Ask the applicant, not this question may be for him.
Just stay here for,
So, the information we were given indicates that there are currently 3 tenants in this in this house?
he doesn't have them there now, but he has a license for it.
Okay. So when, assuming you get your approval and you make these improvements, you can house in, let's say, up to 3 tenants, correct? Okay. I noticed when I was out at the site, that looks like coming off behind the patio, there was a recreational vehicle parked there. Is that yours, or is that used for anything? It looked like it almost looked like somebody might have been living in there.
Back? Yeah, in the background of the patio. And there.
Yeah, there was a recreational vehicle parked there.
Oh, yeah, football car, right there.
I'm sorry, say that again?
He has trouble speaking.
I understand. Yeah, I understand.
But it's like a car behind that.
Okay, but what I'm saying is it used as a car and not nobody's living in there, correct?
No.
Okay, so it's just used as a recreational vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any other comments or questions for the architect?
I just have one, do these apartments have kitchens?
Yes,
They all have kitchens? Okay.
Just explain that to the young lady.
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe, could you go over the floor plans? If you have to enter them as an exhibit, that would be helpful.
I don't think we have a floor.
I think you have these, does the board have these?
Not that one.
Okay.
Okay.
Go through it.
Okay, on the first floor, I have highlighted in red the entry, just for orientation purposes. You have the entry in apartment number 1 here, which is in the front of the building, and it's shaded in this bluish color. And then apartment number 2 is actually on 2 levels, which is back on the first floor, it's here, and on the second floor, it's back here with a set of stairs that are separate. And then apartment number 3 is the second floor in the front. The question was asked about kitchens. Apartment number 1, the kitchen is located right here. Apartment number 2, the kitchen is on the first floor in this location. And apartment number 3, the kitchen is right here in this location. I can give you the statistics of each apartment.
Why don't you do that?
Unit number 1,
Explain what unit 1 is.
which was right here, is a total of 3 bedrooms, and it's 953 square feet. Unit number 2, which once again is on 2 floors, has a total, it's 3 bedrooms once again, and has a total of 1,321 square feet. And unit number 3, which is right here with the entry coming up the steps, which is here, is 3 bedrooms, a total of 936 square feet.
Mr. Zedwarny?
In each of the 3 apartments, will there, in the event of a fire, is there provision for a fire escape?
Yes, well, not a fire escape per se, but we will meet the requirements of the code. When you have a 2-story building, 5D construction, which is the lowest classification type, you will have each one of the bedroom windows will meet the egress requirements, which is 5.7 square feet of clear opening. That will definitely be met.
And on 2 apartments, there's direct outlets.
Well, each one of them has a direct way out.
But I mean, almost on the ground floor.
Well, the 2 of them on the ground floor. The second one is through the stairs, but once again, when you only have 2 stories, the egress requirement would be met.
Okay. Another question I have is your survey, which I noticed you submitted. It was done in 2015. Has there been any changes to the property since 2015?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I got involved last year, and I worked off of the survey that was provided to me.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I have to ask the question, should the application be supported with a current survey?
I can have Mr.
But we'll have, also, I believe you have your professional engineer who could probably address that question too. If this is the most recent survey and nothing's changed on the property, I don't believe any, from my engineering experience, it looks like as long as they testify that this is the current, then that would be satisfactory.
Has anything changed on the property since 2015 in terms of the survey? No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zebra.
I would like to ask Mr. Scriven another question while he's up. Since you're the architect, could you just go over with the board what's the, I guess, how the house is going to be finished? What's the outside going to look like? If you would, please.
The exterior finish, I have a perspective right here. The exterior finish is going to be vinyl siding, and we did provide a small little covered portico, if you will, over the front entry here. Was there any other questions about finishes?
No, I just wanted
The
some
entire
idea.
building's going to be re-sided then,
Yes,
once
it
the
will have
addition
to
is
be,
done?
without a doubt.
No, because the only reason I ask is obviously the building that's out there today is not in the best of shape.
Right. Yeah, no, once you do this much renovation, alterations and renovations, the whole building, to bring it, to make it complete, if you will, it's going to have to definitely be re-sided. You can't piecemeal that.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for the architect? Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next on your,
Next on my
the
list
planner or
is
the engineer?
engineer.
Okay.
Mr. Carroll.
And you just have to qualify your witness, if you would, please.
Mr. Carroll, could you please describe your educational background to the board, please?
I have a bachelor's and master's degree in civil engineering.
And do you operate your own engineering firm?
Yes, I do.
And do you represent municipalities?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Have you ever testified before the New Jersey Planning Board or Zoning Board before?
Yes, I have.
We accept your witness. Thank you.
Were you employed to review any potential floodplain issues with this particular property?
Yes.
And did you visit the property?
Yes, I did.
Did you provide a report to the board regarding this particular project and this application?
Yes, I did.
Could you tell the board what your conclusions were in your letter?
Based on my site visit and the documents I looked at,
Hold on. You have a floodplain.
with respect to stormwater and flood elevation issues, what the applicant is proposing doesn't impact at all. The applicant is proposing is basically putting a canopy over the existing staircase. There is no increase in impermeable surfaces, and the runoff is going to be collected, just as it was before. So I really, looking at it, I didn't really see any impact that it would have in terms of stormwater or its effect on the flood elevation.
Questions for the engineer?
Okay.
You got off easy. We're waiting for the planner.
Mr. Miller, could you put them up for waiting on that?
I'm not too sure I want you now. Maybe.
Mr. Miller, could you please explain your educational background to the board? please?
Yes, I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey, certified by the American Institute of Certified Planners as a certified planner, and I've appeared as an expert witness in excess of 250 municipalities in Pennsylvania and New Jersey.
We're fine. We accept your witness.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you the certified planner for this site?
Yes, I am.
Could you please tell us why you think this application should be approved?
Yes, the application involves a D2 variance, which is the expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming use. And for that type of application, we have to show that we can meet both the positive and negative criteria. In terms of the negative or the positive criteria, we have to show that the proposed use would satisfy purposes of municipal land use law, and that it would meet the applicable criteria to show that special reasons would support the grant of the variance. In terms of the purposes of the municipal land use law that this application would advance, I would suggest purpose A, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner to promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare, because I believe this is an appropriate use of the property. And also purpose I, to provide a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement, because the renovations that are being considered tonight are going to upgrade the property and make it more attractive and a better fit within the existing neighborhood. In terms of the special reasons, there's a number of factors which I think justify the relief that's being sought this evening. The first is that we have a pre-existing non-conforming use. The modification of that use is justified if it doesn't result in a significant change in either the character or the intensity of the use, but there is a modernization of the facility so that the use is improved and made to be more in harmony with the balance of the neighborhood. And here, basically, this expansion is going to result in a full renovation of the structure. A lot of the property is going to be upgraded, including the electrical system, the installation of new appliances. He's going to replace some of the older building materials with new materials, so you'll have new roofing, new siding. And these upgrades are going to modernize the building and make it just all around a more enhanced use for the area in question. Secondly, the modification of pre-existing non-conforming use is also justified when there's aesthetic enhancement involved with the modernization. And that's basically the case called Burbridge v. Mine Hill, which basically says that aesthetic improvements can also be justification for the approval of pre-existing non-conforming use. And here, as you can see from the architectural plans, there's going to be significant renovations to the structure. We're also going to create an aesthetic enhancement that's going to be more attractive. And then finally, I believe the location continues to be an appropriate location for this use. There are other similar uses within the immediate vicinity. There's an apartment complex to the rear of the building, and basically it's a good fit with the neighborhood. And all the facilities are in place to support the uses as currently proposed. So for all those reasons, I believe it meets the standards for the expansion of pre-existing non-conforming use that would advance the purposes that I cited in the municipal land use law. In terms of the negative criteria, we have to show that there will be no substantial detriment to the public welfare and no substantial impairment to the tenor purpose of the zone plan. And here, I believe the application is actually an advancement of the public welfare, and again, you're basically renewing an existing structure, which is going to be an enhancement to the surrounding neighborhood, and create a little more vitality and stability in the neighborhood as a result of the renovations. And also, in terms of the impairment and tenor purpose of the zone plan, there's very little potential here to impair either of those, basically because you have a pre-existing use. The use is going to be identical to what it was, but for the fact that it's going to be somewhat larger, but it's going to occupy the same footprint. It's going to have the same basic character intensity. You basically have 3 apartment units in the existing condition. In the future condition, there'll still be 3 apartments within the structure. All the other improvements on the site are going to remain in their current condition. There's already adequate parking and what have you. So based on all that, I don't believe there's any potential to impair the intended purpose of the zone plan. Basically, the application just allows an existing use to be modified in a way that's going to make it more attractive and more in keeping with the balance of the neighborhood, and have new siding, new roofing, and what have you, so that it'll be an asset to the neighborhood going forward. So, again, I believe it satisfies the negative criteria and the positive criteria and would merit the board's approval.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Questions from board members?
Just one, Mr. Miller.
Automatically look left.
What,
I knew you wouldn't let me get it.
this should be an easy one. What makes this a non-conforming use?
Basically, the zone only allows single-family development, or single-family detached homes, and this is basically triplex.
So the size of the lot, the configuration of the lot has nothing to do with it. It's the fact it's being used for a multi-family purpose.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
If there are no further questions from the board, that concludes our case.
Thank you, sir. At this time, oh, sorry, Mr. Zadworthy.
Yes. You had testified earlier that what I saw was a garage and the back was a shed.
Yes, sir.
Is there a garage on the property?
No, sir.
Okay. In regard to the driveway,
Yes, sir.
which I understand will be paved?
No, sir.
No, sir?
No, sir. The driveway will not be paved, and the reason the driveway will not be paved is because of the hydrological conditions there. So you don't want to pave something where water will be running off in that area. And we have talked with your development staff here, and they have agreed that it is best just to leave the driveway as it is. The driveway is a hard surface, but it's not a paved surface, if you will. The driveway to the left on this side
Yes.
is a hard kind of gravel, but it's not soft at all. And then on this side is a paved. On the right-hand side, if I'm looking in from the right, there is a paved asphalt driveway there.
Correct.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll ask Mr. Poppert, because he has a comment about paving the driveway, but we'll swear you and Mr. Poppert both in,
So
Mr.
if the testimony
Williams.
you're about to give is the truth, so help you God.
Yes,
sir.
And if we
Mr.
could
Williams.
have, Mr. Williams first?
Richard Williams, municipal engineer. You want to go through my entire memorandum, or do you just want to talk about the paving of that parking lot or the driveway?
Just the highlights.
Well, actually, I don't know if they agree to everything that's on this application, on my memo, but just briefly, I'll go through.
Okay.
Sidewalk that they plan to install, first off, they have to make sure it lines up with the existing properties on each side. The detail they have, as you notice in the memorandum, it states that they have to have the township detail. Mainly is you have a curb, you have a grass area, and you have a sidewalk. The detail is actually showing a sidewalk going right up to the curb, but not normal for that neighborhood. So those are the three things on the sidewalk. However, concerning the driveway, we've made a comment in our memorandum that driveway needs to be dust-free. We always ask for driveways to be dust-free, and we're asking for it to be dust-free here as well. There are many different ways to have dust-free. You can have asphalt, you can have concrete, you can have brick pavers. Nothing saying they can't have something like a brick paver that maybe has opening to allow the drainage, but I don't think it's going to change. I know we're talking about water going off the surface. First off, you want to have it dust-free because you'll have all the stone all over the street. That's why we want dust-free. And if you do put any other material down, if this is packed, you're not changing the amount of impervious on this. So that's the issue with the driveway. And then, of course, let me see what else we have. As the engineer had mentioned, one of the concerns we had, they're adding a canopy. Because the canopy is over an existing area, we agree with the fact that it's not increasing the impervious covers. Other than that, I think I covered everything, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Questions? Mr. Poppert?
Sorry. I did the best I could.
Rob Poppert, Supervisor and Planner. Had a memo that was revised December 12, 2019. And if we're looking for highlights, the only thing I think I had left outstanding, it was just a question about the stone driveway.
That seems to be the question.
Yeah, I looked at this many different ways. I know there's an issue because pond runs in the area, impervious, whatnot. For one, if the applicant was not here, he can come in tomorrow, apply for paving permit, pave the driveway, end of story.
Right.
If it's a matter of finances, the driveway can always be narrowed less, and it's about 23 by 65. I did a rough calculation back there on the graphic scale. You can always make it smaller if it's an issue of finances. You can make it smaller if it's an issue of water. Just coming from me, not as an engineer, obviously.
Okay.
But that was really it. I think they've addressed the questions I had and cleared up some issues on the floor plans, but, I mean, other than that, I have nothing else to add.
Thank you, Mr. Pop. Mr. Kokenauer.
If I may just make a comment regarding our professionals' comments and the testimony that was given us. In consideration of the hydrologic concerns you have out there, but also the township requirement to have a dust-free riding surface, I would recommend that you consider the brick or the grass pavers. I think that's a win-win for everybody.
My client has indicated he would be considered doing that, and I think it would meet your requirement.
Okay, and I think, and you heard Mr. Poppert say, you know, a way to save some money is make it narrow. I don't know that I'd make it, when you put the pavers in, I wouldn't make it in it, because if you're going to have 3 families there, 3 bedrooms, you know, you could easily have 6 cars, and you might need, I know you've got a driveway on both sides, but you may need that width to park all those cars. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kokenauer. Mr. Johnson, you indicated your applicant is agreeable to pavers for the drive, the existing stone drive.
On the,
Left hand, looking at the building on the left. Okay. So that clears that question up. Any other questions for Mr. Poppert and Mr. Williams? Thank you, gentlemen. Closing statement, Mr. Johnson, or do you have anything else you'd like to add?
As been presented, we think the application should be approved and requested.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I will open this application to the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, we will close the public portion. My comments are the owner's been agreeable to paving the stone driveway. They've agreed to the other conditions. The siding is all going to be redone. I believe, as the planner stated, Mr. Miller, they have met the positive criteria. It's an improvement to an existing use, non-conforming use, so I like what they're proposing, and that's where we'll go from there. Any other board comments?
Just as a clarification, it's pavers, not paving.
Pavers.
Right.
Paver, ER, not ING.
Right. Thank you.
I would just add that I totally agree with our chairman's comments.
Thank you, Mr. Kokenauer. Seeing no further comments, would someone like to move the application, please?
I'd like to move application number 18-06-023 for approval.
Second?
Mr. Gerstenmaker moved, Mr. Kokenauer second. Mr. Kokenauer?
Yes.
Mr. Zebulon?
Yes.
Ms. Shermer?
Yes.
Mr. Gerstenmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We thank the board very much for your consideration. Thank you.
All righty. Next up is application 19-10-041, type business, owner applicant EPPK. The proposal is using an existing building for office/warehouse/residential. They're requesting use variance and preliminary and final plan. I'm assuming that's waiver of preliminary and final site plan? Is that what they're requesting? The location is 196 Route 130, map 321, section 2684, lot 8 in the R10 zone. Board must act by May 8th, 2020. We have jurisdiction.
Yes, the application has been deemed complete, notice has been provided, the board has jurisdiction.
And the applicant is present.
Yes, sir.
Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, board professionals. My name is George White. I'm an attorney with Turf Coach Triggers and White in Hightstown. This evening, I'm here representing the applicant. In support of our application, we have 3 witnesses that we'd like to testify. If you'd like to swear them in to start.
Yes.
Yep, we'll have them all sworn in at the same time. If all three could raise the right hand, you swear that the testimony about to give tonight is the truth, so help you God. And if we could have the full names,
Start with
profession. Sir?
Joseph Primiano, Primiano, architect for the applicant.
Thank you.
Elizabeth McManus, MCM, ANUS. I'll be the planner.
Dale Leader, Leader, owner and principal.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. White.
Thank you. First to testify to Dale Leader, one of the principals of the applicant, just to give some background on the project and what he's trying to accomplish, so you can understand what we're seeking here this evening. If you could, Dale, could you explain to them your business background and what your business does that's going to operate at the location?
Yes. We're a general contractor. We specialize in renovating.
Although there's really no one behind you, so we're okay. As long as we can hear you.
Yes. We're a general contractor. We specialize in renovating bank-owned homes as well as apartments throughout New Jersey. We have been in business roughly 10 years, and we've been located in Hamilton for the past 5.
Okay. And how many employees do you have?
We have 10 full-time employees. 8 of them are field employees, and 2 of them are office-related.
Okay. With regards to this site, what's the normal business hours you'll be operating there?
9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
And days of the week?
Monday through Friday.
Do you expect visitors at the site on any frequency?
No.
Okay. Your proposed uses, there's 2 use variances that we're seeking. One relates to the warehouse space that's in the back of the building. Can you explain what that warehouse space would be used for?
Warehouse space would be for just short-term storage. We primarily use Home Depot. We actually work for Home Depot. We're service providers. So the fact that Home Depot is about a half mile up the road and it's our main store, that's where we send our guys on a daily basis to pick up supplies. So what we would keep in the warehouse would be, tubes of caulk and some nails and just stuff that they need to grab to keep their vans properly supplied. But all building materials and whatnot are obtained through Home Depot on a daily basis.
Thank you. The front of the property currently, the front section of the building is currently zoned and was approved for usage as retail. We're requesting the board to approve it being used as office space. What do you plan on happening in that space as far as your functional purposes?
The plan is to have a reception area for our office manager and to receive any customers that might come in. And then for my business partner and I to have an office and a project manager and then a conference room.
And how many vehicles do you anticipate having on the site on the average day?
The 4 people.
Commercial vehicles.
Okay, so the 4 people that are working in the office, and then an additional 4 that may or may not be going out into the field. For the most part, everybody has a van that's assigned to them that they take home on a daily basis.
Okay. That's it. Good.
Questions from the board for,
Mr. Leader, just to clarify a few things. At the beginning of testimony, you indicated, I think you had 10 full-time employees. And I got the impression, I thought from what you said, that 8 of them are generally out working on construction projects, and there would be only 2 in the office. Now, not that we're talking about a large swing one way or the other, but then I thought you said there could be as many as 4 there during the day, and perhaps another 4. So I guess I'm just trying to get the numbers to work out, though.
The other 2 at the office would be myself and my business partner, the owners. So I don't include us as employees.
Okay, I got you. And then there'd be 2, I'll say, working people besides you and your co-owner. Okay. And what would be the largest type vehicle that you would expect to have come onto this site? As far as, it sounds like what, that you use vans primarily? We're not talking...
Transit vans, Ford F-250s, Ford E-250s.
So we're not talking about box trucks or any type of heavy equipment, construction equipment? Okay, because I think you said you basically want like building or home remodeling for the most part?
Interior remodeling for the most part, other than exterior or siding.
So in a worst case scenario, you would probably need say, probably 10 parking spaces, 10 to 12 parking spaces, in a worst-case scenario.
Well, if everybody was going to be there for the whole day, but that's...
Yeah, I understand. And the last question I have, if I remember correctly, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, in the rear of this site, it looked like there was a shed, some type of a...
There is a small shed in that back corner.
Is that going to go away? Good. Because after what you're doing to this site, I just had to ask to get that on the record. Thank you, Mr. Leader. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. According to the site plan, it looks like you're proposing 11 parking spaces, so it should be sufficient for, okay. Any other questions for Mr. Leader? Thank you, sir. Oh, Mr. Zadorny, sorry.
I noticed that the parking lot seemed to be cracked, for lack of a better word. Do you plan to replace the parking area, repave it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The existing parking lot is, you're absolutely right, it's in poor condition, about in the poor condition, so that's going to be repaved, as well as the additional proposed parking lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zadorny.
Any other questions? The next witness we'd like to call is Joseph Primiano. He's the architect. If you could, Joe, Mr. Primiano, could you qualify yourself and give your educational background?
Sure. A bachelor's of architecture, graduated from NJIT in 2001. Worked for several different architects throughout 2001 to 2007. Opened my own firm in 2007. My license is current in New Jersey and several other states, and I've testified before numerous boards throughout the state. This is my first time here.
Welcome. We accept you, Mr. Deming, as an expert witness.
Thank you. Mr. Primiano, do you want to go through the site plan as far as, we'll start off with, what's your first sheet? Do you want to start with the exterior? Go for it.
Sure. We can. I can start with the building, and then I'll describe the site. Currently, the building is a two-story building in the front, and it's a one-story building in the back. There's retail space that's on the first floor in the front. It's approximately some areas here. The front space is roughly 2593 in square footage. Above that, where you can see these four windows, is an existing apartment. That apartment is 2637. And in the backside, the single-story warehouse is 2777. The apartment on the second floor is going to stay. The retail space on the first floor is being converted to their office space. And then the warehouse in the back is currently approved for storage of two vehicles. I think there's two commercial vehicles and I think a small van that is going to be used for storage of their different materials. Just supplies that they would load up in their van before they left for the day. The building is very plain. It was in disrepair. It has a gable roof. Since the owners have purchased it, they've started doing some improvements just to stop the decay, just to make it look a little nicer. They painted, they did some trim work, they fixed some of the roof areas that were leaking, and this is the full proposal that they're seeking here. So it was to take a building that was in disrepair, give it a nice new fresh look, nice modern look, add some storefront windows on the lower story, provide a nice entrance for the employees. This door you see on the far left is where the apartment entrance is. That's where it currently is. That's where it's going to stay. When you walk in that door, there's a stair to go to the upstairs apartment. Then when you go down around the side, there's a large overhead door which would allow vehicles to pull into the warehouse. And we just, we had a little, and we tried to dress it up with some new modern materials, the stucco and brick kind of look, with some metal panels, and then we put the site address and their logo on there. And their colors are this yellowish orange kind of color scheme with the dark gray. So we tried to introduce that into the building. The second sheet I'll flip to is our site sheet. Whatever's easiest.
Yeah, the higher up, the better. It ain't gonna be much higher, is it?
So this sheet here, again, this is, and that elevation was part of your packet. These drawings are also part of your packet. This is the site plan as it exists now. This is our proposed site plan. The exterior work, again, is just similar to the building. It's to enhance this area, enhance the look of the property, and also make it more functional by adding some parking spaces towards the rear. So currently, there's only a row of parking spaces in the front. That's in disrepair. That whole parking lot's going to be restriped, repaved, new lighting. There's currently a drive aisle down the right side, and then that ends at the back of the building. The rest of the area is, it's all grass. There is a storm inlet there in the ground, and everything pitches towards that storm inlet. There's also an easement that runs across the property. This little piece that goes towards the back here is about 100 feet long. That actually goes out to Route 156 in the back. I guess at some point, there was some cross flow of the site, because it does have an entrance off Van Canal, and it does have the entrance off Route 156. It doesn't look like that access has been used in quite some time, nor is the applicant really planning on using that access anymore. We were proposing parking in this back area, using that storm inlet for drainage, and then providing a dumpster enclosure in the back there. The intent was to fence everything and landscape along the border, because there are existing dwellings in to the west. There's existing dwellings, and to the east there's an existing masonry building and a restaurant. So again, the intent was just to restripe the front area, keep the drive aisle down the right side, and then we were going to add 11 parking spaces in the rear. There was some comments about having more parking than we need, and there was 2 parking spaces that were in the front that were causing some issues as far as proposed drive aisle widths and making it awkward for some of these cars in the front. We'd be willing to take those 2 parking spaces out. Based on the calculations that I provided and the calculations that the Township also came up with, we only need 18 parking spaces. We were proposing 20. So even with the removal of these 2 front parallel parking spaces, we would still be in compliance with the ordinance. There's also a proposal to replace the sign. Currently, there's a freestanding ground sign on the front of the property. Again, it's repair just like everything else. The intent is to replace that sign in the same location, the same height, the same size, and just put the applicant's name on it. Do some new lighting to it, and just make it look like it belongs. It would match the style that we did in the building, and all of those details and everything else are also part of the packet that we provided. And then the last drawing we have here is an aerial, just to give you guys an idea of where this is at. So we have Route 130 along the bottom of the image. The closest road here is 130 south. All the way on the bottom is 130 north. You have Van Canal that comes in. You have across the top is Route 156. And the dark outline represents the applicant's property. You can see this is the 2-story building in the front here with the gable roof. This is just a little north of that is the 1-story warehouse. And you can see there's a parking lot. This is the parking lot in the front with the drive aisle down the right side. And then this is the grass area that we plan on adding the parking to. There would be 3 spots along the left side here, which would be the west side of the property, and then the 8 spots across the back here. All this vegetation and landscaping and grass area that's in the back going to 156 would be left untouched. And there's there's a couple residential houses to the west. There's an existing commercial facility to the east here, and then this is Wildflowers 2. This is the restaurant that occupies the corner.
I have a question about and I guess this is more for Mr. Meter. The apartment, the residential portion, we were talking about parking before. Do you plan on having a tenant, a full-time tenant in the residential section?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's included in the parking calculations, I'm assuming then, though?
Correct.
Assuming there could be 2 cars probably, at least for the residential, and then besides the commercial?
The ordinance actually requires, it's based on a per square footage. It was actually, I'm sorry, for the rooming house, it was 2 spaces per unit. The office was 1 space for 250 square feet, and the warehouse was 1 space for 750 square feet. So we came up with 4 spaces for the warehouse, 11 for the office, and 2 for the apartment above. So that was 17, and we were actually providing 20. So even with the removal of the 2, we'd be at 18, which includes 1 handicap space.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say, well, Mr. Lito was up, I had a question for him. No, I understand. I guess I'll say the flag portion of that lot, the one that goes out to 156. In listening to the architect's testimony, at the point where let's say that the flag portion of the lot takes off from the larger portion of the lot, I think you said you're going to put a dumpster in there?
That's correct.
So really that would prohibit access between 130 and but I guess my question is, from where the dumpster area ends out to 156, it's grass. And I noticed probably about halfway along there was a gate that was open. Are you planning on, either putting a new gate in, maybe just to further discourage anybody even thinking about using that? I mean, I understand it's in grass.
There's going to be a fence at the back, at the rear of the dumpster. There's not going to be any use of that.
Okay.
We are open to making it open space if you guys want.
Yeah, the intent was to replace the fence along the property line, put up a nice looking fence.
Okay.
And also the dumpster would be fenced. So any of the old chain link, fallen down fences and stuff that's in disrepair, including that shed that's in the corner, would all be removed. The applicant wants to make the property.
Well, I guess that was the question, because the gate that's out there is definitely in disrepair.
It's for trash to gather.
Yeah.
And I think our concern overall for the property is its usage at night by the bar patrons. So the lighting and being occupied, and it should help in that regard.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Leader.
Yes, I have a question about the ingress and egress to the property. Can you please describe how vehicles will be able to enter and exit from the property?
Sure. Currently, there's a 2-way drive aisle right at the corner of Bank Canal that allows for ingress and egress. That would remain unchanged. It's very large. It already has radius curves and depression, and that would remain the same circulation movements that are occurring now would be the same circulation that we're proposing. The only difference is that vehicles would actually be going also into this back parking lot instead of just the front parking lot.
Can they exit back on Highway 130?
No, well, this property actually fronts on Van Canal, so it does have an address of Route 130, but only a portion of the property actually fronts along 130. So if you exit the property, you're actually exiting onto Van Canal, and then you could either make a left or a right. You could come down Van Canal, or you could make a right and come up and then proceed down to go to 130. So it would be a 2-part kind of turn. You're not pulling right out onto 130.
Is there also access to 156, or no?
Well, the access
That's
to
in the rear.
156 is in this back area.
So there would be no
It looks
access
like
there.
that was used at some point because there was a gate there, but the applicant is not proposing to use that for traffic, for vehicle circulation. That will be all landscaped and blocked off.
If I may, I'm a little
Yes.
bit familiar with the area than Joe is. So
Me
we're not
too,
gonna be
since I live
access-
right behind there.
Yeah. So we're not going to be accessing 156 from our property. You go out on Van Cannell and go around Wildflowers and get to 156, and that's how we have to go to take Route 130 north. If we want to get it on Route 130 south, we just go out.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm sorry, now that...
No, you're not,
you-
but go ahead.
You had indicated about across the back, and I know this is, like you said, there's a gate there now, which that gate, I take it, is going to go away.
I don't even know what the purpose of the gate is.
Well, but my question is then, to kind of maybe help even, I'll say, preserve the security of that area, would you be willing to maybe put some landscaping in across, the piece that's out closest to Route 156?
Absolutely.
I believe that's a Mr. Popper's comment.
Oh, okay. I didn't mean to steal his thunder, but...
Well, obviously, we're trying to make the whole property nice. So
Yeah.
to leave that little piece there to be a little trash collection.
Well, that's the
would be
point.
perfect.
I mean, you're doing such a fine job with the rest of it. It's a shame to kind of neglect, you'd be like the...
No,
Yeah, that's
definitely be
fine.
addressing that. And,
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? You may continue, sir, with the planner, unless you're...
I would say, if anyone has any more questions for the architect,
For the architect, I'm sorry. The planner's the young lady that's ready to jump up here and tell us why it's okay to use this.
She's excited to do so, if you don't mind. The next witness is Elizabeth McManus. She's the planner. To have her qualified, we mind going through your educational and professional background.
Sure. I have a undergraduate as well as a graduate degree from Rutgers University in environmental policy and city and regional planning, respectively. I'm also a licensed planner in New Jersey, as well as nationally with my AICP and my PEP. I've been testifying around the state across maybe 7 counties, several municipalities therein, but I think this is my first time here in Hamilton.
Okay. Welcome, and we accept Ms. McManus as an expert witness.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McManus,
Sure. So I'm here to talk to you guys about the use variance. We're here for a D1 use variance to permit the proposed office use inside of the R10 district. This is one of your single-family residential districts, so as such, we need a use variance. We need that variance notwithstanding the fact that this is an existing non-residential property that's got a long-time previous use as a retail building, as well as the existing apartment, which is proposed to remain. We've been through some of the site and surrounding conditions, but before I really get into it, I just want to remind folks, we really are in a mix of uses in this area, even though we're solidly within the, I would say, almost the center of this portion of the R10 district. There are several uses around us. We have some single-family uses that are consistent with the zoning ordinance along Route 156 and along the south side of Van Cannell Avenue, but we also have existing restaurants. There's a small warehouse structure adjacent on Lot 10. We also have a greenhouse to the west of the site, and also
It's a veterinarian.
veterinarian, as well as an auto body use to the east. Yep, that's right. So we really are even though we're in this residential district, the character is actually one of a mix of uses. So, given all that, let me talk to you a bit about the D1 criteria. So, of course, I've got to go through the positive and the negative criteria. For the positive criteria, I'll start with, the first question is the site particularly suited to the proposed use? And I think it really clearly is. And that's first and foremost because we've got an existing building and existing improvements that are able to accommodate the use. As I said, the site was recently retail, and we're seeking site plan approval to change very little about the building. We're able to utilize the existing building, we're able to utilize that existing parking in the front, and we're simply adding some additional parking at the rear. Additionally, as I said, we are in very much a mixed-use area. Even though we're in the center of the R10 district, we're not in the center of a residential district, not in the center of a residential neighborhood. Instead, we've got all of these uses around us, the warehouse, the veterinary clinic, the greenhouse, the restaurant, and so forth. And then, in addition to that, we have a site which I think is not particularly well suited for the permitted uses, namely the residential use. And I say that in part because of the character of the existing site and the existing site conditions, but also how it relates to the neighborhood. This is not a use that is fronting and has access to Route 156 surrounding those nearby residential uses. Instead, we're really oriented towards Van Kennel, but almost more so oriented towards Route 130. Even though our access is just off 130, the site's visible from 130, and I think it associates with its Route 130 frontage more so than the smaller street Van Kennel, which is technically has access to. And so for all of these reasons, I think that we have a site that's particularly suited to the proposed office use, along with the accessory warehouse and the existing residential use. And because of that, moving on to what purposes of the MLUL we meet, I think we meet Purpose A, which is to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner that promotes public health, welfare, safety, and morals. Because we have this site that's so well, one might say particularly suited to the proposed use, we meet this purpose. I think we also meet Purpose M, which is to encourage coordination of the various public and private procedures and activity shaping land development with a view of lessening the cost of such development to the more efficient use of land. And I think we meet this purpose for two reasons. One, more efficient land use in that we have an existing lot that's already largely developed in a manner that's appropriate for this particular use. And so this means that we don't need to go out and find another property, potentially one that's undeveloped, tear down or otherwise eliminate some of those natural features in order to place this building with our proposed parking and so forth. In addition, I think we're also creating more efficient use of land because we actually have an existing building that's so well suited to the proposed use. As you saw, we have very few changes to the building. It's really about upgrading the exterior and upgrading the interior to match this proposed office use rather than the former warehouse use. And all of that adds to the efficiency because that also means being able to reuse that building means that we don't need to demolish the building, we don't need to dispose of those of that now refuse, and we don't need to take in new construction materials in order to build a new building. And so for these reasons, I think that we meet purposes A, as I said, and I also think we meet purpose M of the MLUL. I also need to talk to you guys about the negative criteria, and we've got three pieces of that to address. The first one is whether or not this proposal creates a substantial detriment on the public good. I think it clearly does not. I don't think there's any detriment, much less any substantial detriment. First, we have a site that has an existing status or existing character as a non-residential use. So we're not introducing any new disruption to the existing R10 zone district. Instead, we're just continuing the existing non-residential use, albeit a different non-residential use. I also don't think we have any substantial detriment because of the nature of the surrounding uses. As I've said multiple times now, we're not in the heart of a residential neighborhood. We're in the middle of a mix of uses, and so this use fits right in with these mix of uses, including the warehouse, the vet, the restaurant, and so forth. Also, lending to this no substantial detriment to the public good are the significant improvements we're doing to the building. So yes, the building will have a new facelift. We saw from our architect, the building looks substantially better than it, yes, it does today, but more importantly than it did prior to this particular company seeking to reuse the building. But also, we have already begun cleaning up the property, and we're going to continue to do so. So we're going to have new paving, new landscaping and buffering that will not only mitigate the impact, but I think it's actually going to reduce the impact from what's currently there in that existing warehouse use by providing an upgraded property lines, in the sense that if you take a look at the landscaping plan, you can see new plantings along the rear of the property adjacent to where those residential buildings are. We're also going to be eliminating the shed at the rear, and we're also going to be eliminating that potential access out to Route 156 so that we can ensure that all of this commercial traffic comes through Route 130 and that little bit of Van Kennel Avenue rather than coming in and out of Route 156. I also don't think we have any substantial detriment to the zone plan. So while we are in the middle of in the center of this area of the R10 district, as I've said, we have a number of uses in the area, so we're not we're not creating a disruption or an inconsistency with your zone plan that's not currently there. But in addition to that, I think there are a handful of master plan goals and objectives that are relevant and are supportive of this application. The first is language in there that talks about modifying the zone districts to better match the existing uses. While I'm not here to ask you guys for a rezoning, the continuation of the existing non-residential use in this property, I think helps to advance this concept of moving land uses in the township in the direction of their existing character, and then ultimately perhaps through new zoning that would match that. In addition to that, we're also, through our site improvements, helping to advance the purpose or the objective, I should say, to mitigating conflicts between residential and non-residential uses with adequate setbacks and screening. As I said, we've got screening now that's not currently there, and we are meeting the setbacks. We are also advancing objectives to promote economic development goals of supporting a diversity of uses and well-balanced and sustainable economic development. Adding this new business to this area of the township is certainly in support of that. And then last but not least, the last objective I want to highlight is promoting existing business retention and expansion. And this is yet another example of that. It's an existing business in the township that will be moving to a new location. And so this is directly allowing the township to retain the business within its borders. And so for those reasons, I think we meet those two parts of the negative criteria, no substantial detriment to the public good or the zone plan, but also in terms of reconciling the variances for that Medici standard, we can do so because I would not expect to see this type of a use, this office use, to be added to the R10 district. Instead, what we have is this collection of a mix of uses that are really as a whole inconsistent with the R10 district. And so I think that presence, along with the existing master plan goals to seek to modify zone districts to better match the character and the existing uses in particular areas, I really think helps to address that reconciliation requirement for D1 variances. And so with that, that's all I have to say.
Questions from board members? Okay, Mr. Zeidler.
Yes, I noticed that township staff had a question about the handicap parking lane. Do you plan modification of the parking?
I think I'm actually going to have to defer to my architect for that.
There were some comments on the parking area. A lot of the comments were about the drive aisle and these two parallel parking spaces. We will eliminate those, but still be in compliance. That would make it easier for these 7 spots to back out, and then the drive aisle would be in compliance. There was other comments about having the handicap space all the way on the far end. My logic for that was to keep the striping on the far side because that's where the property starts to taper. There were some comments about switching the handicap space and the striping space, but then that puts a handicap spot very close to the property edge, which makes it very tight for somebody to back out there. I'm not sure the applicant has a preference. I mean, we would provide that handicap space. If the board engineer or planner has a preference, or you guys have a preference, I'm sure we can comply with that.
I will defer to township staff on that.
Other questions? I too have questions about the handicap because to me it'd be more logical if the landing area would be on the passenger side. Normally that's where the handicapped person would be in the car, would be on the passenger side, not necessarily the driver's side. And I believe that was in the planning's comments too about reversing I mean, I'm not sure how many times you're going to actually need to use the handicap spot, but I understand Mr. Zadwarny's questions, and I saw the comment from Mr. Popper too, I believe, about the landing being on the passenger side rather than the driver's side, but I'll go with whatever the township is comfortable with, and whatever the applicant's comfortable with.
It's up to you guys, I mean, I don't...
I understand your concern about it being
Sure.
too close to the property line,
Yeah.
and the driver then,
Correct.
or that, and also you have less distance for backing out.
Yes, and there are, somebody could back into that spot if they wanted to...
Unless you put the handicap spot on the other end of the building.
Well, we thought about that too. If we put the handicap spot here, put the striping on this end, it just shifts everything over. The intent was just try to keep
Some space there.
a parking space away from the edge. I don't think there's a building code requirement on which side the handicap
Right.
striping has to be on. Because sometimes it is the driver, sometimes it is the passenger. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the best solution is.
Based on the testimony thus far, I think we still have one more spot we can actually forfeit. And I'm talking to the applicant doesn't need all the spots based on their testimony as to how many people will be actually frequenting the building. So if needed, we'd have no problem moving the spot to the center of the building, abandoning one extra parking spot on the front of the building for purposes of facilitated striping,
Whatever the applicant and the township work out with the handicap spot, I'm comfortable with it. It was just, personally, I would think it would be better for the landing to be on the passenger side rather than the driver's side.
If we move the handicap space to the center, we could try to line the striping up in where the front door is. So you'd actually have
That would be even
two
better.
stripe spaces, because you could have the stripe space that we're going to add, we're going to move the handicap space over. We could leave that stripe space on the end, because again, we would be at 17 parking spaces is what
Which
the
is still,
requirements.
which is still meets the requirements.
Correct, so instead of having 7 across the front, you would have 6, including that handicap space. We could do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. McManus, the planner, or Mr. Primiano?
Well, Mr.
I already turned my
Primiano,
head.
well, Mr. Primiano's in front of us. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, or you were testifying earlier, again, and I don't know that you covered this. Again, what type of building materials are you going to be using?
The building is currently brick. It's a masonry structure on the first floor, and it's framed on the second floor. So we were going to have some stucco with some painted brick, and then this would be either some fiber cement panels or some metal panels to give that modern kind of look.
You know a
And then
stucco guy.
this is a steel band that goes across.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Zadworthy?
Yeah, I just noticed from the drawing, the entranceway to the apartment, that would have been where you would have had the handicap spot, correct? So you're moving
Yeah,
it to the center.
that's another good point. Why would you want to put the handicap spot in front of then the resident couldn't park in front of their door, unless they were handicapped.
and have to go up the stairs.
Yeah.
Second floor?
But you're still, by making the handicap spot there, that would prevent them from parking in front of the door and the entrance to their apartment, unless they were the vehicle handicapped.
I think if I were you, I would just move the handicap like we talked about, and just leave that last space there.
Yeah.
If somebody can use it, fine. If not, I mean, it's not like they don't have room to back out. Granted, they have to start turning and then go back out, but I'd leave it there, especially, like you said, for the convenience of the apartment. Because again, when I was out at the site to look at this, I happened to see one of the tenants that lives there, and he was certainly a young enough guy. He'd certainly be able to maneuver a car in and out of that space on the end. So I'd just leave the parking the way you have it.
We could put the handicap space right
Yeah, what's
in
it
the
mean?
center here, and then that would allow us to put the striping space on the passenger side, which would line up right with
With the front door.
And that's
That would be logical.
that's also where the ADA recommends, is that the accessible area be to the right of the parking area.
Sure, we can do that, and we'll keep the 7 spots
Fine.
across the front.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions, concerns?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Once more, a little bit redundant, but could you show me again where the inlet is that's going to drain the new parking area back? And
So currently, there's a stormwater easement that comes across the back of, I'll flip to the area here for a second. So it comes across, there's inlets in the parking lot.
Yeah.
There's another one in the grass here. There's one in the grass on the applicant's property, and then there's another one in the driveway of the neighbor's property. And we show that easement actually comes along the property to the west. There's your storm inlet. The pipe runs underneath that grass area, and this is the second storm inlet. This is the inlet that's on the applicant's property, and then it carries across to another inlet. Currently, all the grass slopes towards that inlet because it makes sense. That's where all the drainage is going, and any runoff. We intend to keep that same slope and direct all the water that's currently going across the grass would just go across the pavement and into that inlet.
And who holds title to the easement? Is that an easement to the township, to a utility, or is it just?
Don't know. It was just,
Because if it's an easement, if there's an easement, that would mean that the applicant has to understand that if he paves over the easement, that the pavement could be at any time dug up if they had to access the pipes in the easement area.
Absolutely, even with some of the fencing that's being proposed there, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
If there's no further questions, I'll close my case.
Okay, we'll come back. We'll hear from Mr. Poppert and Mr. Williams. You guys choose who wants to go first. Doesn't matter, you're already sworn in. Go ahead, Mr. Poppert.
Yeah, okay, I'll go first. Rob Popper, supervising planner, memo was February 6th of this year. I guess, as you would say, to hit the highlights again. Going to now page 3. So I guess some of these I'll ask the applicant along the way. Lighting comments on page 3, number 4. Any questions, issues, agree with them as printed, discussion?
We agree. If the board prefers to pick a certain color, I use a spec around 4,000 Kelvin, which is kind of in between your yellow kind of ambient warm colors and your
The color is like the actual light pole, not the illumination.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would say black.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
a dark color. It's going to be black or gray to match the bill.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And there was a comment about the concrete. Now, typically, I usually have the concrete mount for, it comes up, a couple feet, so in case somebody backs into it. There was a comment about making those flush. We could do that as well. We'll make them flush and put the mount right on the ground so that you don't see that concrete. There was comment about removing the old 2 PSE&G floodlights. We can have those removed. We won't need those anymore because we put new lighting throughout.
Okay.
All right. I heard the applicant already talk about removing those 2 parallel parking spaces.
Okay.
And we already talked about moving the handicap spot and landing to the closest point to the access to the building. What was next?
The D on the sign?
Yes, number 7.
We can eliminate that. I had their D from the day stand sticking up. We will eliminate that. We'll stay within the existing size of the existing sign. I'll
Was there-
the step back, yeah.
And was there anything else on here that was of an issue?
The fence, I was just envisioning a white vinyl fence, 6 foot high.
I think that's just so the fence does not go past the front of the house. The house is lot 7 on Route 156. Wherever the setback for the house is, the fence will stop at the front of the house. So it doesn't go into their front yard.
Absolutely, I understand. We will take care of that.
Item 9.
Somewhere.
There's really nothing else for me to add unless the
Can we talk about
took
item
any
9?
issues with
If
somebody
they're
else.
okay with the
9.
landscaping?
Number 9, yeah, I would request, I mean, I see that there's you do have a condition on there about that all landscaping would be done prior to occupancy. Is there any provisions that if it's done and if they finish the building in, say, the winter or something, and it's not proper to be doing landscaping, that they can get a TCO?
We will deal with that as the season presents itself.
Okay. And then you had a comment on number 10 regarding the facade sign.
Yes.
You had it calculated around 85 square feet. As long as the front elevation is 1,350 square feet. So as long as we stay under that 10%, which would be 135 square feet, we would be okay?
Well, no matter what, it's going to need a variance, so I'm comparing it to where this would be permitted in a general commercial zone. So it's one side, 10% of the front. So what you have right now meets ordinance requirements. I mean, I don't know, is there a need to go much larger than what we already have?
85.5 was acceptable.
It was kind of stating the obvious, but there's still a variance.
Okay.
Other than that, it's just some minor comments, but I don't think there's anything else lingering.
Okay.
Okay, condition
I'm
of...
good, unless the board has questions for me.
Number 13 is a condition of approval. There'll be no outside storage of materials, supplies, goods, or bulk items. We're okay with that?
100%.
I have a question about, since the grass area is getting paved, there's no issue with the impervious surface coverage?
The residential zone does not have impervious coverage.
Thank you. Pave away.
Oh, pave away. Mr. Williams would like to respond to that.
You struck a nerve, Joe.
Mr. Williams, you're...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Richard Williams, municipal engineer. Just went over my memorandum last revised January 9, 2020 into the record. Just a couple of points that I did want to go over. You already talked about the handicap. I think it's a great move to put it in front of the building. It should be somewhere you get, in fact, when they go for the building permit, they're going to make a move it so it's closest to the entrance. Also, the parking spaces should be 20 feet or 2-foot overhang. The handicap must be 20 feet, regardless. I think now they might be able to do that. They removed those 2 spaces. We're not concerned about that 25-foot aisle now. The other concerns that we had, we brought up, is concerning what was just mentioned about the grass and the fact that they're going to have to pave and the drainage. The plans that were submitted to us have absolutely no grades whatsoever on it. It's very difficult to determine that it will grade, it's going to be graded properly. So we're going to need a grading plan in order for us, as a condition of approval of this application, have to be certain that when it does get paved, it's excavated, the drainage going to go into the inlets properly, and also it causes no adverse impact to any neighboring property. The other thing is, they never gave any, or did not, I didn't have any unless there is it, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's never been a addressing of the Phase 2 stormwater. If they're going to have to pave, this is, I think, over about a half an acre lot, and I don't know if there's going to be any new impervious. I don't think they're going to have more than an acre of disturbance, but we have to be certain that they're not going to be subject to the Phase 2 regulations. There's nothing that tells me one way or the other. They just have to make sure they're not over a quarter of an acre of impervious. So we'd like to have a statement at least saying that they're not, just to address that issue. It has not been. And that's all I have.
Sure, I agree with that. I did show a basic building plan. I'm not an engineer, but I did show some of the directions of the slope of the property. We will have an engineer provide a full grading plan with the spot grades, spot elevations, and proposed slopes and grading to show that the site will comply. We're not going to cause any issues on any neighboring properties. And just so you guys are aware of the area of the parking that we're paving in the back, it's 5,222 square feet, so we're under that quarter-acre requirement.
So then if we can get some statement that comes in if it's part of the application, and that's what you...
So part of the approval will include a grading plan.
Yes.
Who's addressing the memorandum from water pollution? I have some comments here.
I don't Is there something on there particular?
One of the requests was a condition of approval, the applicant must submit the wastewater utility as-built plan for all sanitary improvements in electronic format.
Yeah, because most likely what will happen, when they go for the building permit, they're gonna have to, go to WPC, and they're gonna have to go through whatever their use is.
So you're okay with all those comments that are on there about the no inside drop manholes, garbage disposals, all that? Okay.
That's correct. There's an existing waste pipe in there for the bathroom facilities, and we're just replacing those bathrooms.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Any board members have questions for Mr. Poppert or Mr. Williams? Mr. Harrison?
Yes, I think it might be Mr. Popper.
Okay.
It's
Stop
concerning
ducking in.
the lighting.
I'm here the whole time.
Let me see. Was there a lighting plan submitted with
Yes.
the isometric lines and all that? I'd like to know if the poles, are the poles high and are in the back parking lot, are they adjacent to that residential there on the left-hand side as it's laid out?
There, do you have the lighting sheet here? Or should I pull it out?
I do. We did provide a lighting plan. I believe the lights we spec, would project away from those residents.
I mean, like, they're a full cutoff, I guess, so that they don't spill into that residence.
Yeah.
Depending on the back of the building, I don't know if it was pole mounted or building mounted.
Yeah.
So we had proposed 4 lights. So there's one in the back corner here, facing towards the parking lot. There's one in this inside corner that's also facing towards the parking lot, both away from the residents. There's one in this corner, down here. There's one in this corner over here, which is facing towards the front of the building. And then we have one more, the 4th light is on this corner, which is also facing towards the parking lot. And we had the poles mounted at 20 feet high.
There was no wall-mounted packs on the back of the building that would face any neighbors, right?
Correct, there's none. I mean, there'll just be the emergency egress lights that have to be on there by code, but no, we were not putting any large wall packs or area lights on it.
Typically with the freestanding fixtures, they would just have a house-side shield, so
Yeah.
if I'm standing, the house is behind me, you throw the light forward and you have a cutoff so nothing goes backwards more or less. As long as there's nothing on the building, that would give the glare, so that would eliminate that too.
Could they be fitted with dawn to dusk controls or timers? The gentleman, the owner, testified that their business runs 9 to 5, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, there's, with different hours, with daylight saving time and everything like that, I would say, I've seen other boards put like a cutoff on it, like, 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night, if the board would like to do something like that. I don't know if I would limit it to just...
We have 2 concerns on that. One is we've got a residential usage, which they'll be using the front parking lot. The other is that there is the adjacent restaurant for which people park in a variety of places in this area and have historically walked through this property, so we'd rather have lighting potentially a little later than our normal business hours to make sure that they're not...
Usually the question would be, will all your light fixtures be on all night into the morning? Or will they all cut off? Or will certain ones cut off just to give security lighting? Other than the residents in the front, I mean, that light could theoretically stay on all night, unless you do want to cut off if it goes in their window upstairs. But there's a lot of different options here.
I mean, we just want to be good neighbors, but we also want to be safe about what we're doing and smart. So whatever has to happen, as far as the timing and stuff. The other buildings in the area have lights on throughout the night. Safety reasons, so it matters.
Yeah, I know that the car dealer that fronts 130 right across from my neighborhood.
The building right behind.
His lights are on all the time.
The building right behind it.
You never know when you buy a car.
So, I mean, whatever. We'll comply with whatever.
Yeah, I think we can let that,
we'll
we'll just leave that for them to work out with the township, whatever is agreeable on both parties is fine. I don't think we need to put any stipulations on it in our resolution. We'll leave that for you to handle with the township staff. Any other concerns or comments? Thank you, Mr. White. At this time, we'll open it to the public. Any member of the public wish to address this application? Seeing none, we will close the public portion. Final comments, Mr. White?
No further comments. We close our case. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation this evening. As with the previous application, I believe your planner did an excellent job with justifying the positive, negative criteria, how the applicant meets. I know the area very well, as I live in that neighborhood, basically off the other side of 130 on Woodside. It's definitely an improvement to what's there now. I go by there a couple times a day, so I like what you're proposing. I think it's going to be good for the neighborhood. I think it's going to be good for all concerned. And again, you did a nice job of presenting your case and proving the positive criteria. Any other board comments at this time? If none, I'll ask for a motion, please. Don't all jump at once.
Mr. Chairman, I move application number 19-10-041 for approval.
Second.
With the conditions that we discussed throughout the evening, that Mr. Ulicki has notes on.
Yes, the letters of Mr. Popper, Mr. Williams, and WPC, also no outside storage of materials, and the drainage statement and grading plan prepared by a licensed engineer will be submitted for the board professionals' review and approval.
Mr. Sherman moved, Mr. Kuchenauer second. Mr. Kuchenauer?
Yes.
Mr. Zaborni?
Yes.
Ms. Sherman?
Yes.
Mr. Grischnicker?
Yes.
Mr. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Weber?
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck.
That brings us to Starbucks. Application number 20-01-003, type is business owner applicant, High Glen Clover Square. Proposal is constructing a 2,180 square foot freestanding Starbucks with a drive-through and a 3,800 square foot freestanding First Watch restaurant. The applicant is requesting preliminary and final site plan, use variance, FAR, and conditional use. Variance relief from front yard setback, impervious coverage. Here comes the impervious coverage. Number of parking, number of signs, and sign setback. Locations 3100 Mercerville, Quaker Bridge Road, and Sloan Avenue. Map 35, Section 1603, Lot 1901, in the HC zone. The board has till May 8th, 2020 to act. Do we have jurisdiction?
Yes, the application's been deemed complete, public notice has been provided, and the board has jurisdiction.
Thank you. For the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Keith Davis. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Nemat, Perlo, Davis & Goldstein, and here on behalf of the applicant, High Glen Clover Square LP. At this hour, I'll bet most of you could use a Starbucks. So that's what we're presenting tonight, together with a new restaurant concept called First Watch. New to us, it's actually been a restaurant that's been around since the early 1980s. It's a restaurant that serves breakfast, brunch, and lunch. And we're proposing that together with the Starbucks, two separate freestanding buildings within the Clover Square Shopping Center. We're actually before this board back in 2017 proposing another development within the same area of the shopping center. I know, Mr. Zaborni, you remember us being here. We proposed at the time a Tim Hortons coffee establishment and a separate retail bank building that was never constructed. No tenants were ever identified, and those structures, which this board previously approved, were bigger in terms of building area and more intensive in terms of traffic than the uses we are now proposing. So this board already granted many of the same variances that we are here requesting from you tonight in terms of FAR, which is floor area ratio, of course, a D variance, and conditional use variances as well. We're here tonight to seek them again. We think this is a better planning alternative than what was previously presented to this board. The overall square footage of the buildings is actually reduced by some 600 square feet, so there's less building area. There were 2 drive-through lanes proposed with the bank. We've now reduced it to 1 with respect to the Starbucks restaurant. So overall, we think this is an improvement. But more importantly, it's part of the ongoing redevelopment of this shopping center. And under High Glen Clover Square LP, the owner has undertaken the redevelopment of the shopping center, and this continued progress in that regard with the development that we are proposing to you here this evening. I have with me our engineer, Mr. Ryan Whitmore, who is with Landcorp Engineering Consultants. They prepared the site plan submission. And I also have with us Beth McManus, who is now an expert here in Hamilton Township, having just testified before you on the previous application, and she'll provide testimony as a licensed professional planner on the FAR variances, the conditional use variances, and the C variances that we are requesting. So with your permission, I'd like to have those witnesses sworn in.
Come forward, please.
Does she need to be sworn in again?
Sure.
Okay.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God? And again, your name, profession, for the record, please.
Ryan Whitmore, RyanWhitmore.
Thank you.
Elizabeth McManus, MCM, ANUS, planner.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, may I ask Mr. Davis a question, just as a housekeeping matter?
Okay.
I see in the material that was submitted to the township, one of the documents was a traffic impact study. I don't see a traffic engineer here tonight. May I ask why?
He had a conflict in his schedule, had no one else from his office that could attend, but I know Mr. Whitmore is familiar with the study, and we can address any questions you may have from a traffic impact standpoint.
Is that Mr. Horner?
It is Mr.
Okay, thank you, that's all. Just wanted to get that on the record, thank you.
Okay, you may proceed, Mr. Davis.
Mr. Whitmore, I'd like to call you up first.
Just, if you would qualify, Mr. Whitmore, should be quick.
Mr. Whitmore, you're a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey?
I am.
And how long have you been so licensed?
10 years.
And you're associated with what firm?
Landcorp Engineering Consultants, PC.
How long have you been with that firm?
4 years.
Where did you receive your education in the field of engineering?
Penn State University.
And your degree is in?
Civil engineering.
And have you testified before other land use boards such as this one throughout the state of New Jersey in the field of professional engineering?
I have several municipalities throughout New Jersey, as you know, this board as part of the previous Tim Hortons application.
We accept Mr. Whitmore as an expert witness.
Thank you very much. You have been engaged by the applicant to prepare the site plans that we've submitted as part of this application, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So you're familiar with the site, right?
I am.
Can you describe to the board the shopping center, I think referring to the aerial pictures that we have?
My old stomping grounds when I was a kid, when it was open field.
Two aerials of the existing conditions are A1.
And what does A1 show?
This is an overall existing conditions aerial exhibit that shows the property in question. North orientation on this exhibit is up. We have Quaker Bridge Road to the east, Sloan Avenue to the north. The outbounds of the property in question is in a thick yellow line, and the actual 100-foot, the building setbacks is represented in a white dashed out line. So really what this is an aerial photo of the existing conditions. As you can see, the larger retail strip, the Robert Wood Johnson section is on to the west, and then the remainder of the retail strip along the south. Here's a series of out parcels that exist along both frontage streets. We have, so looking at the Quaker Bridge Road frontage, you have the Dunkin' Donuts, and then moving your way to the Sloan Avenue frontage, you have the Taco Bell, and then these are the former out parcels that have since been removed. However, we're showing, just as a form of reference on the application, those two out parcels exist, and those were the old hobby stores and the music shop.
And this was before the current owner acquired ownership. Gated shopping center that more investment was brought to bear as a result of the applicant?
That's correct. It was before the applicant had purchased the property. It was typical of just older, stale shopping centers that were just really ripe for redevelopment. And as such, since the purchase of the property, at the owner's expense, they had invested in, upgrades of the retail strip on both sections, on the west and the south, as well as the existing Taco Bell that has, I believe that's currently complete as far as the facade upgrades.
Now, I mentioned in my opening, we were here, and I think you were with us in 2017, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that was under a prior plan of development, but affecting the same section of the shopping center that concerns this application, right?
That's correct.
And that was for a Tim Hortons?
That was for a Tim Hortons and a multi-tenant retail strip.
And I believe total square footage of the retail restaurant building was 6,750 square feet, correct?
That's correct.
And that included a bank with 2 drive-through lanes?
Yes, that's correct.
And also a 2,350 square foot Tim Hortons fast food restaurant, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And that application had with it variances for floor area ratio, I believe?
That's correct.
And that was approved by this board at 20.8%?
Yes, that's correct.
And also conditional use variances for front yard buffer at 14.77 feet, correct?
Yes.
Providing a screening wall or fence in the side or rear yard buffer.
Which we did not provide, and
Variance was granted?
And variance was granted, yes.
Number of parking spaces, variance was granted for that, correct?
Yeah, variance was granted to provide a 48 parking stall deficit, where at the time 849 spaces were required and 801 stalls were proposed.
And also for deviating from the signage requirements and the distance limitation to other fast food restaurants.
Yes, that's correct.
So all those variances were granted in 2017, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
But the project was not built?
That's correct.
Okay. So the current proposal, could you describe that to the board?
Yes.
Could you give us a word for that, too?
So first, I'll start with, this is an overall site plan, and then I can jump to, I have a more zoomed in exhibit as well.
So this is A2, and A2 is the same board you had previously, just having the overlay with the proposed development, correct?
That's correct.
Just briefly orient the board where the area in question is located.
So the area in question is the previous location of the former music store and the hobby shop. Yeah, so that's on the Sloan Avenue frontage. There's Sloan Avenue runs east and westbound. Access to the property will be brought from the 2 existing driveways that flank the pad areas on the east and west. I'm going to refer to A1 real quick to with regards to access. And just to point out that there's actually a 3rd driveway that accesses the existing pad area. So this is the western flanking access drive. This is the eastern driveway, and then there's actually a third existing driveway which will be eliminated as part of the application, and that was the former access to the old hobby store.
Do you have a blown-up version of that section?
Yes.
So mark that as A3.
This is A3. So this is just a zoomed in existing.
Well, let's skip that. We'll go with that.
I like the skipping part.
So this is the previous approved, right?
I'm not seeing a whole lot of
Why don't we
opposition.
do the current approved?
Yeah.
Under the current proposal. We'll mark that as A3.
My concerns, Steve.
All right, and just describe the 2 buildings and where they're located and what the size of each is.
So the 2 buildings, the north orientation is up. On the western building is the proposed First Watch. That's a 3,800 square foot proposed restaurant. It's going to have about 150 seats. That's 20 seats outside and 130 seats inside. The Starbucks is going to be the eastern building pad that's proposed. It's a 2,180 square foot building, and that also will have outdoor seating of about 20 seats. So each restaurant will have its own outdoor seating area. For the Starbucks, it'll be on the western side, on the side of the building that faces the First Watch. First Watch will be to the north.
Okay.
You show me the drive-through for Starbucks,
Yeah. So this.
the drive-up window.
Yeah. So if you're a vehicle that's going to be accessing the drive-through, So if you're heading eastbound on Sloan Avenue, you're going to make a right into the first driveway. You're going to bypass, I'm going to drive past the first wash, make a left into the drive-through, and then the drive-through lane runs along the full rear of both restaurants.
So that's the only entrance to the Starbucks? There's not one up further by the Starbucks?
In order to access the drive-through, yes, it's a one-way drive-through. Yeah,
Okay.
so this is the only access point to the drive-through.
That's my concern, the stacking.
Yeah,
The
so we have
queue.
a stacking lane that's provided. There's 12 cars in the stack.
Well, I was concerned that if it was coming off Sloan and coming in that way to the drive-through, then it would back up, but since it's coming in and going around from the bottom, it alleviates my concerns.
Yep. So, and as...
We don't need another Chick-fil-A situation.
I think we're all familiar with the Chick-fil-A situation.
Horrible.
So as part of the previous application, it was expressed as a concern of the board, which we had accommodated and are matching as part of this orientation, and that's the drive-through bypass lane. So if you're, we have the drive-through bypass lane that wraps around the side of the Starbucks, around the back of the Starbucks and up the side. So the pickup point is right along the eastern side. So there's actually a bypass lane that wraps around the southern end of the bypass of the drive-through lane, and that can access the existing shopping center access driveway. And then also, there's a second bypass lane for any patrons that are looking to access the interior parking spaces that are in between the restaurants. So in the event that, there are vehicles in the drive-through lane, these parking stalls, the angled stalls and the parallel can be easily accessed without any disruption of any cars that are parked in the drive-through lane.
And the two driveways for exiting, after you go through the drive-through and you want to exit, you go out the driveway closer to the Taco Bell, and that's going to be a no left turn?
No.
Well, it is if I have anything to say. There's no way if there's a left turn out of there on the Sloan Avenue during peak rush hour, either morning or evening, nobody's making a right turn, and that's going to back up into that shopping center. You're not making a left turn on Sloan Avenue, trust me. I grew up in that neighborhood, I know what it's like, and I can't speak for the other board members, but I won't approve this if there's a left turn on that driveway.
It's extremely dangerous. I thought that. It's extremely dangerous.
I'm sure Mr. Williams or Mr. Poppert were going to address that. I'm sorry if I stole your thunder, but I'm going to lay it right out on the line, right off the go. If you don't put a no left turn sign there, you're not getting a yes from me.
Well, the only note, Mr. Chairman, is that this is the first time the shopping center's been before.
I know this shopping center very well.
Oh, I believe you. I believe you.
I've lived in this town for 67 years.
I believe you.
Trust me, you're not making a left turn out of that driveway between the hours of 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., maybe even a little later, or between 4 and 7 p.m.
And that may be true, okay? And I think motorists understand that.
And if you notice, there's a no left turn sign at the drive, when you come out of the theater, between certain hours, you cannot make a left turn coming out at that light that's just going towards Cornell Heights. I'm just telling you, I'm an engineer, not a PE, sorry, but I did work as an engineer for 37 years. Mr. Kokenauer is a traffic engineer, and I know he's probably has some comments about this too. That is just, that's an accident waiting to happen, a left turn out of that driveway.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
I'm just telling you, you're getting a no from me if there's not a no left turn on that.
Let me just make my point.
Sure, it's not going to convince me.
That's fine, there's other members of the board.
Well, you need 5.
I get it, I understand. My only point is that this is the first time this application has been reviewed here in this community. The overall shopping center redevelopment has been reviewed, and no left turn prohibitions have ever been.
It's in the memo from engineering, or from Mr. Poppert.
For this application.
For this application. What happened previously, other than Mr. Zadwarning, this is new to the rest of us.
I understand that, and our position would be that this use is only one portion of an overall shopping center development, and that folks that are visiting these uses are going to be accustomed to those traffic patterns, and they know they're not going to be able to make a left turn anyway.
And a no left turn just went up at the Wawa, 130 and Crosswicks Hamlin Square Road, because that's another disaster, making a left turn into 5 lanes of traffic. and I notice now there's a no left, not that anybody pays attention to it, because I was behind two cars that made left turns out of here, but left turns into traffic, I'm gonna get off my soapbox and let you move on.
I understand, it has to be safe, and it's our
Well.
expectation that motorists will not...
This is why I believe we asked for the traffic engineer.
I understand. Any other questions before I move on with my testimony?
Yeah.
Just,
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Zawarni.
I have a question about the drive up for the Starbucks. How many windows will you have for customers coming with their vehicles in the driveway? How many windows to serve them? Only one?
Just one.
One. And what would happen if there's a backup? They have to go all the way around the building?
There's 2 points to bypass. Can you note what those are?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of stacking there. That was one of my other concerns, and you did alleviate that concern.
Yeah, so the stacking, there's more than enough stack to accommodate the Starbucks, the Starbucks demand. First of all, you have your pickup window. So call that, car 1, 2,
Could you
3.
step back a little bit? I'm sorry, if you don't mind. Thank you.
So car 1 is at the pickup window. 2, 3, 4, 5 is your order point. Anywhere between car 4 and 5 from the Starbucks, the way that they operate, and the time that they need to prepare the food and prepare the order is that sweet spot that Starbucks looks for, as part of any drive-through layout. So then, in this case, we have 5 cars, the 5-car order point, or 5 cars between the pickup and the order point, and then you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's 7 cars beyond the actual order point to provide for the necessary stack. Now, as part of the drive, or the bypass lane, that in the event that, before you approach the order point, you have more than enough opportunities to bypass the drive-through lane, and then find a place to stall, find a place to park, or just leave the shopping center altogether.
If there were cars stacked up along the side of the building, will that inhibit other vehicles from access to parking spaces?
From here, it's tough to say.
I get the sense that it's going to be very narrow room for cars desiring to park if there are cars stacked up in that, around the perimeter of the building.
So the actual stack wraps around, and the 12 car in the stack blocks one angle part of the building. That's, that's in the back of the first block of the building. So any potential impact on vehicles will be potentially disrupted by the last car in the stack.
Yeah.
Which, if there's a continuation of any of the queue that backs up into the drive aisle, I mean, there's more than enough opportunity for cross-connection and cross-access to really go find a place to park.
Are you saying that vehicles attempting to park in the parking spaces will not have any trouble backing up if there is a car in the stacking lane?
If there, no.
No what?
No, they won't have, they will not have a problem.
I think there's ample room for stacking and bypass.
I'm not sure, that's why.
Well, from what I can see, as Mr. Whitmore explained, there's enough room, should it ever occur, you could get all the way almost to Sloan and still not have an issue with stacking. I don't see that as an issue as far as the stacking and the bypass, Mr. Kokenauer.
Yeah, let me ask a question about that. Do you or your traffic engineer, who I understand can't be here tonight, do you have any real-time data to support the fact that a 12-car stack is sufficient? Because I've seen some Starbucks that run more than 12 cars.
Yeah.
Just saying.
But I'm thinking that 12 only gets you to the back of that second building. You still got room to go all the way out to Sloan Avenue with another 20 cars probably.
You do.
And if you have 32 cars in line, then I'm buying stock in Starbucks.
Yeah, and if you're 32 cars in line, then more than likely, they're going to find a place to park or go
Right.
to Dunkin'
Or
Donuts.
use their app and do the order and then just go in and pick it up, like my granddaughters do. Mr. Garcia.
Just so I'm clear on the size of the buildings, now, the bank is obviously larger than what the Starbucks is now, but the restaurant's quite bigger than what the Tim Hortons was in 2017.
No, that's incorrect. So the Tim Hortons was 2,350 square feet.
Right.
And the Starbucks is 2,000.
Not the Tim Hortons, I mean the Tim Hortons as compared with the First Watch.
That's true, but the original retail restaurant building was 6,700.
Right. The restaurant's larger than what it was in 17, compared to Jim Hortons.
So if you compare, a direct comparison to the Tim Hortons to the Starbucks, which essentially this is the same building pad, or very similar. So you have the Starbucks is approximately 200 square feet smaller. Now, the former multi-tenant strip that had the bank and the restaurant and the retail building in it, that was 6,750 square feet. The First Watch is 3,800, so roughly 3,000 square feet smaller. The First Watch is 3,000 square feet smaller than the previous multi-tenant building.
Okay, good.
Well, what would be the hours, because you had mentioned it was breakfast, brunch, so I'm assuming they're not open for dinner,
That's correct.
They are open for dinner or not?
They are not.
So they close maybe 3 o'clock, 4, so that gives you even more parking for the evening hours for the Starbucks and for stacking.
The hours for First Watch is 7 a.m. to 2:30 p.m.
What kind of hours?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Zadworthy, you have another question?
I'm not familiar with First Watch. Do they have any other locations in this area?
Cherry Hill, I think.
Yeah, Cherry Hill's the nearest one.
Cherry Hill?
The Little LA.
How long has First Watch been in business?
1983.
And their first store was where?
West Coast base in California, and but they've grown fairly rapidly over the last 10 years.
Are they a franchise?
I don't know if they're franchise
Yeah,
owned or
just looking.
corporately owned. I don't know. But they're certainly branded and nationally based.
It's just the first time I heard of them.
Me too. When I got involved in this application, and it's breakfast, brunch, and lunch. Just read an article about them on Forbes magazine before the meeting. They tend to lean toward female clientele with higher education levels. This is for the Forbes.
Yes, I'm not going there.
May I add a comment?
I got the higher education part, but I don't.
Since the question came up about, since the question came up about First Watch, I'll add my 2 cents. I have been in 2 First Watch restaurants. Neither of them anywhere close to here. One was in Sarasota, Florida, and one was in Orlando, Florida. They are a top-notch, first-class operation. I have no problem with the First Watch going on this site. I have a problem somewhat with the Starbucks. So just so you know, the First Watch
I'd rather have been to Tim Horton than the
is a top-flight operation. And the fact is, they're not going to be generating traffic during the PM peak hour either.
Yeah, that is the good thing, well, you'll have it in the morning, but it'll be coming in.
Yes.
Which leads to another question. If you're coming down Sloan Avenue, I guess the best access is going to be from Quaker Bridge Road. Are you going to be allowed to turn left, and is there a left turn lane off of Sloan Avenue into that shopping center? I'm not...
Sure.
Yeah.
There is one now?
There's no term prohibition.
Wait, look, suicide lane? Is that the
Yeah,
technical term?
there's the middle suicide lane, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a turn lane to the left coming, if you wanted it.
That's not properly used now.
The center lane now.
Yeah, oh my God, no.
Yeah. I think you understand our concern about the left turn. I mean, I'm willing to, if there's room for negotiation on hours of no left turns, but you're getting close, well, you're not close because you still have the Burger King and you got the Taco Bell before you get to the intersection. But I know what the traffic is like out there. I mean, if our traffic engineer was here, we could ask for what level of service this is at this point, and it's a what?
An E in the peak hour.
And that's as bad as it gets. There is no F.
Yes, there is an F.
There is an F?
And I'm surprised it's not an F, but I didn't do the
But,
study.
yeah, I mean, from personal experience, I know with the Wawa on 130, and cross, whatever that, it's Clockner Road on one side, but it's Crosswick Scammon Square on the other side. The left turn out of there, if you, the first driveway, you can make the left out of the driveway by Spignola, but they just recently put a no left turn, because people were making lefts out of there into 5 lanes of traffic, because you have the 2 left turn lanes, the 2 straight lanes. That's a whole nother issue with the lights being not lined up with the lanes. And then you got the right turn lane, and I just have a, all right, we'll let you finish your application.
Okay, thank you. Can we look at the elevations of the building?
Starbucks. Can you put that one on the floor?
This is the elevation, the building elevation of Starbucks. More specifically can you just generally review what the building consists of?
Yes. So this is a rendered version of the black and white elevation that was supplied as part of the site plan application, just for, a better, a more illustrative purpose. Now, it's, we have the, as you can see, it's going to be a combination of, earth tones, earth tone materials. There's what's going to be on the top is going to be an ET panel, which is just like a cement fiberboard panel, black coating along the top, and then a cultured stone, along the vertical columns. And then along the ground elevation, it's going to be painted CNV block mold. So,
Pretty basic Starbucks.
And that's the other point.
yeah, this is the prototypical Starbucks. As you can see, there's also going to be building facade signage, that's, brand representative, as well as, some drive-through directional signage, which we can talk about those details, a little bit later as part of our waiver testimony, waiver and variance testimony.
Can you review the sign package and go over the square footage of each of the signs?
Yeah. All right, Steve, Mike.
Yeah, the orange, green, and 10,000, and the one for 40-pound bag.
I'm also going to introduce another exhibit.
Why don't we finish with Starbucks and then we'll get to first flash? Okay. Why don't we review the sign package for that and then we'll get to
Okay. So the first facade here, which I'm going to call so I guess the Sloan Avenue facade, or I guess the facade that faces Sloan Avenue, which is the northern end. As it turns out, as the building functions, that's actually going to be the side. So that's going to be the on the top left corner here, this elevation. So you really have your side entrance door. So you have your your Starbucks channel letters. Those channel letters are 27.13 square feet. As code permits, for wall-mounted signage, you're allowed up to 10% facade coverage on the front of the building. And then for any side or rear wall-mounted signs are permitted a 10 square foot sign or 2% of the facade area for the areas for the sides of the building that directly abut private or public parking. So in this case, we are permitted the 10 square feet on this end of the building. Moving down to, this is the opposite side of the building. So this is going to be the side of the building that faces the interior of the shopping center, and it actually abuts the drive-through lane. So you're just going to have the one smaller drive-through sign, and that is 6.96 square feet. And that's a 1.3% facade area coverage. In this area, since it directly abuts the drive-through lane, it doesn't abut a public parking area. That is we'll be requesting relief for the drive-through directional signs. Now, the side of the building that has the drive-through and a pickup window, you just have the typical Starbucks logo. That's a 25 square foot sign. And that's when you just measure the box. So it's a 60 inch by 60 inch square, or I guess the diameter of the circular logo. And that is, it's a 25 square foot sign, as well as another 6.96 square foot drive-through directional sign that's going to be wall mounted. So that's a total of 31.96 square feet of signage.
Excuse me, Mr. Whitmore, Mr. Zadwin, you have a question?
Yes. Can you tell me about where, when deliveries are made, Is there an access door for deliveries?
Yeah.
And where's that?
Can we just finish the signs and then deal with the loading area question real quick? I just wanted to have you
I have a
sum
good
up.
answer for that.
We have a good
Okay.
answer for that.
Okay.
So what, just confirm to the board, what's the total square footage of the building, not a signage we're proposing?
Total square footage is 104 square feet.
Okay. And under, if we were literally to comply with the ordinance, how many, what's the total square footage we could provide with the front facade at 10% and the side at 2%?
That would be 133 square feet.
Okay, so we are, even though it's more, we've granted, we need a variance for the number of signs, correct?
That's correct.
But we are still within the total amount of square footage that is permitted of the, under the ordinance, even though it's not exactly on the front facade and the side facade.
That's correct.
Okay. And do you believe that the sign package as proposed is more in keeping with the building design in terms of its scale and its style? That's correct.
How many signs over are we? I'm not, without me flipping through all the pages, what's the max allowed and what's proposed?
So you're allowed one on the front that takes up 10%, and then one on the side or rear where you go by the parking area.
And you're proposing?
So we're permitted this sign.
Right.
On the side, however, it exceeds the 10 square feet permitted. We are permitted this sign, this is the front of the building.
Mm-hmm.
So we're permitted this one sign, however, there's an additional drive-through directional sign, which, I mean, it's more of a directional sign for wayfinding.
Mm-hmm.
And then, this, the Starbucks logo in the drive-through, this is on the drive-through side, as well as the southern facade has the single drive-through directional.
So we're
sign.
not talking enormous amount of signs, we're just talking a few little typical Starbucks signs you would have on any Starbucks
Brand
building.
identification and really just.
And really, as far as the directional signs, I mean, they're just common sense signs, so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I jump in a second?
Yeah.
So how many are there? Am I counting 6?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
All right, so that's different from the last version I have. I think I counted 8.
Yes, it's different than the last version.
We did reduce it somewhat.
Yeah, we spoke with the tenants and.
Well, there's gonna be one more for them.
And this is, we saw this as a more reasonable site plan package that still accomplishes the goals of the brand.
I was trying to figure out what was taken off. But proceed. I just want to make sure I heard that right, that's all.
All right, why don't we pivot to the question about.
Just real quick, if there are any questions about signage from board members? No, we're
We
good.
still think of the first watch signage too.
Okay.
Why don't we answer your question about the loading?
Okay, that's fine.
For the Starbucks or both?
Both.
Can you show where loading's going to take place? Frank?
Yeah.
Let's go back to what, A3?
So this is A3, the rendered site plan. Now, as you'll see, there are dashed out rectangles that are in the rear of the first watch, and then a dashed out rectangle that's in the rear of the Starbucks. There's more than enough space to accommodate them to park in either the drive-through, I guess they are, the drive-through lane that's behind the Starbucks, and then just parking right along the rear service area. So on the side, so looking at the first watch, to answer your question about access to the building, there's going to be either steps. There's a series of steps that lead up to the rear door, or there's going to be a loading ramp for anybody who's wheeling in a hand truck. Similar configuration. However, there are no steps in the rear here, just based on the limited gap that we have and the width of the rear of the building. There's going to be a loading ramp that provides access to the rear of the Starbucks building. For anybody who's wheeling a hand truck from the truck parked in the back and wheels it into the building.
And what time will there be deliveries being made?
Off-peak hours. So I have Starbucks hours here. I believe they close at 10 o'clock.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, so they, Monday through Saturday, 5:30 a.m. to 10 p.m., Sunday, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. So the loading is going to take place during off hours. I mean, the goal is to just not to have any disruption to the flow of traffic through the drive-through lanes or just along the rear service area.
Thank you. All right, can we go over to the first watch?
First watch signage?
Sure.
mark this as A5. So unfortunately, this didn't print in color, but you have individualized handouts that are in color, right?
Yes.
Where are those?
I have that.
So individually, some of these are duplicated in terms of the,
That's a packet of all of them.
Yeah, I think you're up to A4.
Is it one for each?
First watch, take 4 was Starbucks.
third from the back is the elevation for the first watch, which is in color, which mirrors what was marked here in black and white. All right. First, before we get into the signs, just briefly describe the nature of the building and the building materials that we use.
So once you flip over the color version of the elevation, what you have in your packet is a color version of what I have up here in black and white. So as you'll see with the color schemes that are provided and illustrated on the rendering, it's a very similar color scheme to what was on the Starbucks building. The only noticeable difference, and I'll point to it on my board here, and you'll be able to see it represented, is along the top band of the elevation, there's these vertical seams, and this is going to be metal siding. So it's a machine fabricated metal siding that's going to be, I believe it's a copper finish, medium bronze finish. And the remainder of the building materials are similar, if not the same, to the Starbucks. So you'll have the black metal coping, along the top elevation, as well as and then ethos and stucco along the lower sections that are not going to be the glass for the windows. And that's just going to be a consistent band that wraps around the building.
Before I get back, can you note where the building mounted signs are located, and go through the similar analysis as you do about this to the total square footage?
Mr. Davis? I believe you mentioned earlier in your presentation that there will be outside cable.
Yes, that was the testimony.
Okay, can you point to where they're going to be?
Sure. Why don't we go back to A3, which is the rendered site plan. Can you note the outdoor seating areas, Frank?
So the outdoor seating area for the first watch building is going to be on the side of the building that faces Sloan Avenue, so that's the north side. And then for the Starbucks, there's going to be an outdoor patio seating that's going to be on the west side of Starbucks, and that's the side that faces the first watch.
And how many tables would you say would be on each?
About 20
On each?
on each, yeah.
All right. Going back to A5, which is the building elevation for first watch. What's the total, what are each of the signs, what do they consist of, and what's the square footage?
So the first watch, let's talk about sign. So it's going to be the Fork and Sun logo with the first watch text, and that's going to be stacked over top of the breakfast, brunch, and lunch text. I mean, all that works together as a single sign. Mr. Poppert had referenced, there's a small gap that separates the logo sign from the breakfast, brunch, and lunch sign. And I guess there's just more of a clarification as to, are these two separate signs? Are they a single sign? And in our experience, and based on what the brand and what the sign says, it's treated as a single sign, since the breakfast, brunch, and lunch works together as part of the overall brand and first watch and what they're trying to accomplish.
Based upon that analysis, there will be 2 building mounted signs.
Yes, such that there's going to be a building sign that is on the side that faces Sloan Avenue, and then this is going to be the building mounted sign that's on the side that faces to the west.
What's the side?
The sizes of Both sides are, they're equal, the both signs are equal in size. They're 53.77 square feet each.
And what are we permitted?
And similar to how we calculated the Starbucks, the front facade, which is going to be the western facade, that is 1,094 square feet. So the front facade, at 10% of facade coverage, is permitted 109 square feet.
So the front sign is almost half of what we're permitted.
Yes. And then for this, then for a side or rear that abuts a parking area, you're permitted one additional sign at 10 square feet. So the side of the building, that's that faces Sloan Avenue, which is the northern facade, that has a 53.77 square foot sign. However, that does not directly abut any parking, so we'll be seeking relief for that.
As to the size.
As to the size.
But when you combine the side, what we're printing out of the ordinance in terms of the side elevation, the front elevation, we are within the overall square footage that would be permitted if you combine both of those.
That's correct. So if you combine both of those, you'd be permitted up to 119 square feet, whereas the total of both facade signs combined is 107.54 square feet.
Are there any other signs associated with First Watch other than the two building mounted identification signs, or is it just the three sitting right now? But nothing directional?
Nothing directional.
As was with the Starbucks?
That's correct.
We are proposing a monument sign?
Yes.
For both uses, it's going to be one sign though, correct?
That's correct.
All right, do you have a rendering of what that is going to look like?
There's a rendering in the final page of your packet. And I have that on
Chairman, one is exhibit A6. And where is the building with the monument sign located on A6?
So points of the location. So this is a signage and striping plan, very similar to the plan included as part of the site plan application. So we have the overall plan view, and then just the illustration of all the associated signage and striping associated with the pad redevelopment. So we have the plan view and the associated call-out for the location of the signage. And then detail 5 on here is just the monument sign detail. And this graphic has the exact same elevation view of what the monument sign detail proposes. And that's going to be a 5-foot tall by 10-foot wide monument sign that has a shared, space. The First Watch, the daytime cafe shared with the Starbucks drive-thru.
And how far from the curb line will that be? The end of that sign, how far back will it be off the curb line?
It'll be 11 feet, set back 2.4 feet from the proposed right-of-way. It'll be outside of the clear site triangle at the intersection. On the rendered site plan that is part of your package, we show the shaded out clear site triangle and show that, it clearly shows that the monument sign will be outside of that.
You say proposed right-of-way, does that mean you're dedicating land to the township? Or is it?
It was previously dedicated to the county. So
To the county.
Sloan Avenue is a county line road.
Right.
Is a county road.
So that proposed line was already approved, and then, so,
Yeah. So the county really, they had
Right.
two shots at approving this, and they never raised the question. But as part of the previous application, we had dedicated, right of way along the pad development area's frontage on Sloan Avenue. And
That's
then
good.
for the remainder of the site frontage, we offered, and it was accepted, a public easement
Okay.
for the dedication. So it's a continuous 11-foot, combination of a right-of-way and
Mhm.
public easement.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Zadwarny.
am I correct as I review your presentation that there's going to be a drive-in at First Watch?
No,
Just Starbucks.
just Starbucks.
First Watch is a sit-down restaurant only.
Just over here.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
That has a drive.
You may.
I'm looking at the facade signs for First Watch, and is the color scheme that's shown on there, the color scheme that's going to be used? I mean, this is a colored rendering.
Yes.
And is this the same color scheme that's going to be used?
That's what we were told by the project architect, yes.
Okay, 'cause I gotta tell you, if it shows up this way, I can barely read First Watch. Now granted, my eyes aren't like they used to be, but I have no trouble reading the Starbucks. But looking at First Watch, it's really not very distinct. And those three words underneath it, to me, again, if they appear that way to, I'll say, the motoring public, it's wasting putting that on, because it's, I don't think you'll be able to see
What do you
it.
think the coloring of the First Watch sign kind of blends in with the building?
Yeah.
What we can do is we can, if
That's-
the board, work with your professionals to work on a color scheme
Yeah,
so
we
that
don't-
stands out more from the building.
I'm just saying from a business standpoint, if I were the business owner, I would want that sign to be a little more prominent, as Mr. Kokenauer said.
Yeah.
Right now, it doesn't, in that concession, in this picture, it doesn't help advertise.
No, we understand that, and I think First Watch is sensitive to it because they obviously want to advertise breakfast, brunch, and lunch because they're not as well.
I mean, the colors in and of themselves are okay, but they don't get the job done. If you can't identify what that sign says, I mean, it's,
Just a little constructive criticism to take back to your client.
We will, and if the board would be kind enough to give us some flexibility on the
I
colors.
don't think we, as a board, really particularly care the color of the signs. It's just as long as it's agreeable with the township professionals, we're okay with that.
So the concern is just the contrast between.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't stand out.
I mean,
Business
even the
standpoint,
Starbucks I'm looking at, it looks like it's green lettering on some kind of a gray background, and it's,
it stands
you can
out.
read it, no problem. But, yeah.
Thank you, we'll get that back and whatever.
Yeah, that's just for a business thing.
We'll finalize at the time
Yeah.
of building permit submission.
Right, that's
Especially
fine.
to a traffic engineer. Now granted, this is not a traffic control sign per se, but to a traffic engineer, it's gotta be effective. And to me, this is a completely, totally ineffective
We want to
sign.
identify the use. Agreed. Any
Okay.
other questions about the elevations with the sign package? All right, just a few questions. Obviously, there's some upgrades to lighting that we're proposing on site. We discuss that, and landscape.
Yes. So, lighting first. It's going to be new pole-mounted LED light fixtures that I'll reference the proposed site plan. Which they are shown here, but it's kind of tough to see behind all the landscaping. However, it's going to be a combination of pole-mounted and building-mounted light fixtures, all brand-new LED light fixtures, downward-facing, full cut-off LEDs, so they're new, energy efficient, and really it's just it'll be another complement of the redeveloped pad area that's just going to really give the new redeveloped pad area a modern look. The actual fixtures and poles, they're going to be, they're going to be colored to, the color associated with that pole is going to be complementary to the buildings. I believe it's going to be a bronze or a brown color for the poles. But essentially, that's it. The lighting package is in accordance with the code requirements. The actual height of the mounted light fixture, they're not going to exceed the height of the building, which is what the code regulates and which we do comply with.
Now, there was a comment raised about providing 5% of the parking lot as landscape area from the board's, I think it was Mr. Papa suggested that.
Yes.
Can we accommodate that in revised plan?
Yes, we can.
So that relief goes away, that we were previously asking for. We can accommodate the 5%.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So can you show the board where that area is located, where the landscaping is going to be provided within the pad?
Within the pad area, I mean, as you can see, so A3 is, the rendered site plan on top of the aerial photo, and then it shows all the proposed landscaping as it's represented. You can see, I mean, there's no shortage of landscaping or green area that doesn't have an abundance of landscaping already provided on it. So it's really the 5% of the parking stalls is what needs to be green and landscaped. So it's a tabulation of the parking stalls, and then you provide the requisite number of plantings associated with that in the landscaping island. So we have, each landscape island, they're scattered throughout the pad area, and the cumulative sum of all those landscape islands
will be that which complies with the required 5% parking for the pad area.
All right. I want you to review each of the variances that we're requesting. I know Ms. McManus is going to provide testimony from a planning perspective, but just so the math is on the record, first, with respect to the conditional use variance, the variance is that we are requesting the first is the buffer strip adjacent to the front property line. 20 feet is the requirement. We're at 14.77 feet, correct?
That's correct.
Can you show the board on A3 where that condition is located?
So that condition exists between essentially the frontage sidewalk and the row of parking that, is adjacent to the Sloan Avenue frontage.
And that was the conditional use variance granted as part of the Tim Hortons approval previously, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and the function and really the purpose of the catalyst that caused the nonconformity with the buffer was the offering of the right-of-way. So there was 11 feet of public right-of-way that was offered as part of the previous application, and that's essentially where the buffer strip is measured from. So when you take the measurement from the edge of pavement, which was the previous right-of-way, there's more than enough buffer to comply.
There's also a requirement to provide a screening wall or fence in the side and rear yard, which we're not providing here, correct?
That's correct.
And that's another variance that was previously granted by the board associated with the other 2017 approval.
That's correct.
There's a requirement that there be no other fast food restaurant within 1,000 feet of another fast food restaurant. We violate that condition here because the Taco Bell restaurant and I think a Burger King potentially as well.
Burger King and then Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts. Another variance that was previously granted in 2017.
That's correct.
Okay. And those largely are, I think all those other restaurants are within the center or?
Yeah, so the Burger King is a separate out parcel on the hard corner. That's an independent lot and block. However, the Taco Bell and the Dunkin' Donuts are part of the property in question.
So generally speaking, it only affects conditions within the shopping center.
That's correct.
We also necessitate parking variance, which was also previously granted, not just in connection with the 2017 approval, but other approvals concerning the redevelopment of the shopping center in years past, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Could you just go into a little more detail on what you're requesting in the parking variance, please?
So what's the deficiency?
Is it the number of spaces?
Yeah, the number of spaces. So the deficiency is 29 parking stalls. So that's 831 spaces are required, 802 spaces are proposed, and it works out to a 4.4 overall ratio.
Okay.
So as I mentioned, 48 was approved before, and we're requesting.
I have a follow-up before you start.
Go ahead.
So,
I just have a follow-up on the parking. If you look at Mr. Poppert's, on page 5, number 7, about the 3 parallel parking spaces, are they
Yes.
still on the plan?
we'd like to retain them on the plan.
Could you just show me those? I have the picture in front of me, but
So
it says on the west side of the...
Yeah, so it's the central parking area, right in between the two restaurants.
Just note
I'm
where
looking
the
at the
3
different
parallel
picture that
spots
he is.
is.
Yep. So on the east side of the drive aisle is where there's 3 parallel parking stalls, and then on the west side of the drive aisle there are 7 anchor parking stalls.
Oh, it's actually here, these 3 parallel ones. Okay.
And we
So you'll need a waiver for that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Again, as far as the parking goes, if we were looking at the parking requirements for just these 2 uses, how does the parking stack up? What would be required versus what's being proposed?
There's 68 required for the first lot, 31 required for Starbucks,
So it's 99 total.
99 total.
And what do we provide?
62.
62. I'd be more concerned about that parking variance than the overall parking variance for the entire site. I'm sorry, what was that number again you're providing?
62.
62? Thank you.
Now, it is part of the shopping center, though, correct?
That's correct.
And there are parking spaces located immediately adjacent to the patio area, correct?
That's correct.
Within the shopping center?
That's correct.
And there is also a drive-through for the Starbucks, correct? That's correct.
And if they use the, what I would call the overflow or spillover parking, there's pedestrians that would have to cross the drive-through aisle to get to, the store.
That's the same thing I
Just
was
saying.
looking at, Jim.
Yeah, so what we've done, and it might be tough to see on the reduced size copies, however, on A3, on the southwest corner of the plan, you can see there's some blue striped out ADA stalls. So there is actually a sidewalk that leads from those 4 ADA parking stalls, and really this immediate row of parking right here. There's a sidewalk that wraps around and through the green area and heads north up towards the first launch pad. And then there's also a pedestrian connection that connects the two paths, for pedestrian connectivity for that off-site parking, or not off-site parking, for the off-pad parking areas in the event of an overflow.
And we can do that here? We can provide those space improvements here?
Yes, it's already provided on this bridge.
There's a pedestrian walkway?
Yes, yeah, you can see it. It's a dashed out piano key style crosswalk.
Oh, okay.
That connects the sidewalk from the landscape aisle that divides the angled row of parking.
But as Mr. Kokenauer said, that he's, all right, I'm looking at a different plan than you are.
And that connects to the parking outside of the...
Oh, okay, I'm looking at a different picture.
Yes.
The crosswalk that's adjacent, the one, looking at this plan, the one on the right, it basically starts by a dumpster and goes across the bypass lane and then the drive-through lane. And where does it touch down on the building side of that? Looks like it touches down into our landscaped area,
The loading dock.
It looks like that's...
or a loading dock.
Yeah, it looks like that's a directing error. That should be shifted over to the east by a couple of feet so that the crosswalk lines up correctly with the actual landing at the bottom of the loading ramp.
It's time for a break.
You can show that on our class plan?
Absolutely.
Okay, not to break your flow here, but normally we take a break around 9 o'clock just to stretch our legs. Us old guys have to use the, we will recess till 9:15. You and I just had discussion about possibility of working on just the first watch and coming back to Starbucks with consultation with our board attorney. That option's not on the table right now, but
Is or is not?
it's not.
I don't think it is, because it's all one application, and they're intertwined as far as parking concerns and other concerns, so I don't see how you could really approve one and hold over on the other. I'd rather just address it all at once as far as testimony from the engineer, and we still have planner's testimony coming up. And again, it's all part of one application seeking approval of the 2 restaurants.
Also, I understand your concerns with our next meeting being April 14th, an issue with members of your team. May 12th is an issue with the board. I won't be here, but that doesn't mean Mr. Angelico couldn't listen to the tapes, or Mr. Hewitson, and fit in, but that would be pushing it out 2 months. The other possibility, I'm only going to throw it out there, is that we had a second meeting in April, just for this application, I guess, and any others that may pop up, I guess, in between. But that's something we would have to discuss. Sabrina would have to survey the board members to see what the availability is. But as far as this evening, Mr. Whitmore will finish up his. Hopefully, we can get Ms. McManus in. And if they can't attend April 14th, at least their testimony's on the record. I know there's at least 3 of us on the board that want to hear from the traffic engineer before we take any action. I expressed those concerns to you during the break. So that's where we are right now, so you know, I'm going to put everything out there for you so you understand the position. I understand my no left turn thing. is just a personal issue. It's a county decision, not my decision. Since that's an existing driveway, and if you're nuts enough to try and make a left out of there, then God bless you.
You do so at your own peril.
I don't want to be the guy behind the person trying to make the left turn, because then my blood pressure pills would be increased. But I wouldn't be there anyway, so it doesn't really matter. No offense to Starbucks. Unless my granddaughters petition me to go get them something. Then I'll go to Wayhorse Avenue. It's easier to get in and out of it. So, that's where we are. So, we'll let Mr. Whitmore continue his testimony. We'll get Ms. McManus in to do her testimony. Hopefully, we can finish that up within the hour. And then we'll see where we are at that point.
Okay.
Okay?
Mr. Whitmore, you've discussed conditional use variances with respect to buffer strip, fencing, and the screening wall, the distance limitation of the fast food restaurant parking, and you've already provided testimony on signage, which is the other conditional use variance, correct? That's correct. And you've described those deviations? Yes. On the record already. Other than that, there's some other C variances, I believe, for front yard setback? That's a general bulk standard, correct? Yep. What's that condition, and where's that located?
So the front yard setback, that is, so the code requires a 100-foot front yard as measured from the right-of-way. The First Wash restaurant, that proposes an 80.68-foot setback, and the Starbucks proposes an 85.21-foot front yard setback.
Any other general C variances, flexible C variances that were requested as part of this application?
From impervious coverage,
What's that condition, and what are we proposing?
60% is the max permitted. Existing condition is 74.1%, and the proposed condition is proposes 74.9% impervious coverage. So that works out to a 5,781 square foot increase over what exists today.
And any other variances?
The FAR?
Yeah, that's a D variance, and this is the max by testimony on that, correct?
That's correct.
Any waivers that we need to review for the record, other than the ones you've already testified to?
Yes. There's a code requirement for the max coverage of parking, loading, and access aisles. That's section 160-119C1, and that's a function of 45% of your site needs to be landscaped. 45% of the parking, loading, and access aisles need to be landscaped. And really, what that is a function of your total impervious coverage, but you subtract the buildings away from that. And your percentage of that needs to be landscaped is 45%. We propose a 54. So the code says that you need to, or I guess a maximum of the coverage can be 45%. Our application proposes a 54.4% coverage, whereas 53.6 exists today. And really, that goes hand in hand with the impervious coverage, where we have a very minor impervious coverage increase, and that's really a function of the addition of the bypass lanes and the few extra parking stalls, and really just the perceived benefit of improved traffic circulation and the opportunity for the shared parking is a reasonable justification for that design modification. The next design modification we're requesting is to permit concrete curbing in lieu of the Belgian block curbing, and that's just so that it's kind of consistent with what exists out in the shopping center today. There's a section that requires a separation of 500 feet between a use that involves a vehicular queuing in a residential zone. That's code requires 500 feet. We propose 155 feet between the actual drive-through window and the R5 zone, which is across Sloan Avenue. And that's substantially the same as what exists for the Taco Bell and Burger King, which are to the east of the pad redevelopment area. And finally, it has to do, the final modification has to do with parallel parking stalls and the aisle width, which we talked about. And that's the aisle width that divides the angled parking from the parallel parking stalls is proposed at 15 feet now on the proposed plan, and code requires 18 feet. And design modifications are requested to permit the 3 parallel parking stalls and for relief to provide the 15-foot in lieu of the 18-foot drive aisle.
Does that sum up all the variances and waivers?
That's it.
Okay, I know we're going to hear from the board's consultants. Any questions until then from this witness?
Not at this time. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Zawarni.
Yes, I don't believe we addressed the question of how many employees are going to be in both Starbucks and First Watch and the hours of business in both.
Well, I touched on the hours of operation previously in my testimony. I believe that
It was
the first watch, that was 7 to
7:30,
2:30.
yeah, something like that, and the other one's 5:30 to 10 or something like that, and
Yeah.
except Sundays is a little less hours.
Yeah, 6 to 9 on Sunday.
That's a good question. Where is the employee parking of those
Yeah, that was
62?
my next question.
Since you're requesting a waiver of 33 parking spots, where are the employees parking?
I mean, it's from the desirability of parking for the restaurant patrons. I would emphasize that the employee parking be in the overflow area, and the pad area be to accommodate the patrons of the restaurant.
Okay. But that would be up to the owners to enforce. That's not something we can enforce. Yeah. But that does lead to Mr. Kokenauer's concerns about the request for the waiver of parking spaces, because that was a good point Mr. Zawarni brought up. We didn't discuss employee parking on top of patron parking.
Well, I agree we need a variance. But the employee parking is built into what your parking standard is. So I think what we propose to do is provide for the employee parking in the general overflow area and direct the two users to direct their employees to use those employee parking spaces. And I think you can include that language in any resolution of approval. We don't think it makes sense to provide signage for it.
No.
Because if the employee's not there, then it's open to the general public.
Right. Yeah, I'm not suggesting signage, but I know in other shopping centers, like where the ShopRite is on 130, they have their employees park at the far end of the parking lot. But it's not signed, but that's just the nature of the employment.
Yeah, and we'll have, our applicant's obviously the shopping center owner, and he controls his leases, and then...
I mean, ideally, we would like to see the First Watch be busy all the time and have plenty of parking for customers. The other one? I'm more of a breakfast guy than a Starbucks coffee guy.
Amen.
Not that it shows.
Any other questions for Mr. Whitmore?
Yes,
Any others?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Harrison.
I'd like to just have you explain how the parallel parking on the west side of the Starbucks will work for the passengers of the cars that are going to park there. Do they have to step out into that landscaped area and step through next to the patio, or
Yes.
they do? Yeah.
Passengers will.
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming that the parking would be...
It's one way.
Yeah, it's one way, so the driver would he'd walk into traffic and the passenger into the bushes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is a 9 by 22 foot stall. A 9 by
Might not be
22 foot stall, which is...
Yeah, I mean, there's I've seen those in other shopping centers, the parallel park. There's the handicap spots in front of Walmart.
Yeah, I mean, it's the purpose of the parallel parking stalls, as well as the angle stalls, are purely for the convenience of the patrons of the two restaurants. Yeah.
Well, plus if you eliminate those three, now you're even more below what you're asking for.
It exacerbates the request for our parking variance even further.
It just seems a little awkward. It seems a little awkward for the passengers, especially if it's patio right next to it, the outdoor patio. It looks like a small row of bushes in our handout.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the parking lot screen.
Okay.
Really just that wraps around the perimeter of all the parking areas.
Okay.
Any other questions at this time? Thank you, sir.
I'd like to call Elizabeth McManus forward.
And she's already been qualified in the previous application, so you don't need to qualify. Hello again.
Hi there. Long time no see.
So, Mr. Manager, you've already been qualified?
Yes, you can just go right into the testimony.
Okay, great.
You're familiar with the development plan, you reviewed the application you filed, and you've updated the stuff, correct?
Yes.
You recognize that the application requires a deviation from the ordinance control for maximum floor area ratio. Can you first describe to the board what's an FAR variance, what's floor area ratio?
Yeah, floor area ratio is essentially the ratio of building area as compared to the site area. So, for example, floor area ratio or an FAR of 1.0 would be where you have a building that entirely, if it's a single-story building, entirely covers a property, or if it's a two-story building, it's just 50% of the first floor and then 50% of the second floor. So that would be a 1.0 FAR. Here, of course, we are far below that at an FAR of 0.205, which is what's proposed, and that compares to 0.2, which is permitted. And I also should note, it also compares to 0.208, which is what was previously approved by this board for the previous 2017 application. So we're actually 0.003 under what was previously approved.
So we're thinking, compared to the previous approval for this pad area, FAR is improved.
Yeah, we actually have less building area by about 600 feet.
Now, the requirements on the applicant to show that the site remains suitable for these two pad developments, even though we can't meet the FAR requirements. As a professional planner, do you believe the applicant can do that here, and why?
Yes, I do. I say that in part because, I mean, for one, I think when we're talking about 0.008 or about 600 square feet on a property like this, it's really a de minimis. It's a de minimis change above that which is currently permitted. But beside that very small deviation, I think the 600 feet can easily be accommodated on the property. As you can see, we have a site design that's aesthetically pleasing. We've been able to bring those same elements of landscaping and open space, if you will, into this site design in a manner similar to what was previously approved. And I think also that 600 square feet can be accommodated in terms of the traffic, and even though we are seeking a parking variance, it is not that 600 square feet that triggers that parking variance. So I don't see this as a meaningful amount of floor area that would dictate greater impacts from the development of this property over that which is currently permitted or over that which was previously approved.
So in addition to the FAR, for those reasons, you believe the FAR variance is warranted?
Yes, and I should also say I don't think there's a substantial detriment to the zone plan or for the public good. I don't think there's a substantial detriment to the public good, again, because this is really just a de minimis amount of floor area when we're talking about a site of this size, much less a shopping center of this size. And in terms of your master plan, I do still think that this small deviation of floor area promotes those goals and objectives that talk about retaining business and promoting economic development throughout the township.
In addition to that, there are a series of conditional use variances, which are also D variances. And it's worth noting here that the uses in question are permitted
Yes.
in the ordinance, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So these are different kinds of D variances, not use variances, correct?
Correct.
So these are deviations from specific conditions that relate to these uses.
Yes.
And you're familiar with what those are?
I believe so.
So the first one, I think, relates to the buffer strip, which is required to the front property line. Mr. Whitmore provided some testimony on that deviation. Do you believe that conditional use variance is warranted?
Yeah, absolutely. Our 14.77 feet proposed compared to the 20 feet that's required, I do think is justified, in part because, for a few reasons. One, we've been able to create a frontage along Sloan Avenue that provides for those important elements. If you take a look at the site plan on Exhibit A3, we've been able to maintain the sidewalk, the street trees, and some additional open space, if you will, between the cartway and the parking area to create an aesthetically pleasing site design. And also, one of the things that we heard that was really important is that this deviation is made necessary not just simply by the desire to provide parking and to provide adequate loading space, but is actually triggered by the right-of-way designation along Sloan.
Second, conditional use variance relates to the fact that we are not providing a screening wall or fence in the rear or side yard.
Yeah.
Do you believe that's warranted?
Yeah, absolutely. One, I want to be clear that that was actually previously granted in the 2017 application, but regardless of that, I think it's appropriate in this particular location because the purpose of that is to really provide greater screening or separation between fast food, which is what all of these conditional uses are specific to, and adjacent uses that may be somewhat incompatible. That is clearly not necessary here because we are surrounded by like uses. We actually have 3 additional fast food places within the same shopping center, and then additionally, by not providing that wall or that fence, I think it creates more of the perception of less density, the perception of more openness, light air, and open space across the property.
And you've also just mentioned the 1,000-foot distance limitation of the fast food restaurants.
We do not comply.
We do not comply. Also previously granted.
Absolutely. We're about 174 feet from the nearest one, which is the Taco Bell. I believe we're also within 1,000 square feet for the, 1,000 feet for the Dunkin' Donuts and the Burger King. We don't comply. I think that, and I think that's acceptable in this location in part because we have these like uses. We have a character of an existing site with a character which is inviting to this particular type of a use for an additional coffee shop. We already have a coffee shop, maybe a better coffee shop according to some, but we already have a coffee shop in the area, and so this is really just a continuation of this existing character and the type of traffic that's coming and going across the site.
You've heard the testimony from Mr. Whitmore concerning the parking variance.
Yeah.
And you've heard his testimony about the overflow parking that's available within this existing developed shopping center. Parking variance was previously granted
Yes.
in 2017, correct?
Yeah, we're actually looking for less deviation. I think there was a 48 space deficit before and 29 now.
Okay. So slight improvement over the 2017 approval.
I'd say a significant improvement, actually, yeah.
And do you believe that conditional use variance is warranted here, given Mr. Whitmore's testimony and your own observation?
Yes, in addition to moving the plan as compared to the previous approval towards compliance, I think there are also a few things here that are helpful. One is the applicant's commitment to having the tenants, the Starbucks and First Watch, utilize employee parking, encourage employees to park in some of this overflow parking. And then in addition, we have pedestrian access to the greater parking lot, part of the greater shopping center. So you see the 2 points, one near the dumpster, which I understand from testimony is going to be amended for improvement. And then we also have another one accessing the handicap parking space on the southwest corner of the parcel in question.
And then lastly, deviations from the signage, identification signage controls. Mr. Whitmore's testimony with respect to the number of signs that were proposed, which deviates from the ordinance requirements, and also the maximum square footage. Do you believe there's any negative impact associated with that variance, and if the site remains suitable despite that deviation?
No, I don't think there's any negative impact, and I say that because for a few reasons. One, I think it's really important to remember that we're seeking relief from not the number of signs and the total area. Instead, this is just deviation from the number of signs. We've basically taken our permitted square footage of signage area, and rather than just putting one big sign on the front and a secondary sign on the rear, we've instead spread the signage across most of the facades in a way that creates additional interest for the building, architectural interest, but frankly, more importantly, it does a better job of directing customers throughout the site to make sure that folks know where the drive-through is, for example, with the Starbucks. And I think that's important, especially when we're dealing with an existing developed property on, frankly, a busy road. We want to make sure that folks are not circling the building unnecessarily looking for that drive-through, but instead they feel confident that if they turn left or right from their particular direction, they'll get to exactly where they're going in an efficient way.
In addition to those conditional use variances, we also require C variances for front yard setback and impervious cover. Do you believe that's a flexible C2 criterion, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that both of those are part of the C2 criteria.
And you believe they're warranted?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that both of these create a improved situation, essentially. Just for the, real quick, for the front yard setback, we are required to have 100 feet. We are proposed 80.68 feet for the first watch, and then 85.21 feet for the Starbucks. And I want to compare that to what was previously granted, which was not too different at 85.38. So the Starbucks is just about the same, and the first watch is only another 5 feet. I think that's appropriate because what it allows us to do is create a one, it allows us to maximize space for parking, but it also allows us to create a site design that's essentially consistent with what you see along Sloan Avenue. I would rather see, in this type of a commercial district, I'd rather see development that is not the same, but is compatible and similarly structured, similarly designed. And we've been able to do that here with 1 or 2 rows of parking between the building and that buffer, which is in the neighborhood of perhaps 15 or 20 feet. And so this applies that consistency along Sloan Avenue. That's going to create a more aesthetically appealing, more desirable land use and more creativity, which I think is important. In terms of the impervious cover, we are permitted 60%. We are proposing 74.9%. I should note that, again, 75.19% was granted, and so we're actually bringing this down a little bit. And importantly, existing was 74.06, and so what I'd like to suggest is that this increase from the existing to the proposed of less than 1% is really a de minimis change over that which is existing, and so by providing even just that 1%, less than 1% additional impervious, it allows us to create as much space as possible to provide parking.
You've heard Ms. Whitmore's testimony on all the waivers. Do you believe all those can be granted without any negative impact to the zone plan or the public good?
Yeah, absolutely. We have just a handful of these, and I'm very much supportive of him, of his testimony. For example, the permitted area for access, parking, and loading coverage at 45% versus the 54.4%. I think that's important because it allows us to give adequate space for all of those things, which, as we've heard throughout the testimony, is important, making sure that we're able to maximize parking on the site and able to provide adequate access and loading, and then relevant for the Starbucks is the drive-through as well. And then, I'm sorry, we also have the relief for the parallel parking, the aisle width. I also think those are justified because, again, one of the goals for this application is to ensure that we have as much parking available for these uses as possible, and that supports it.
Any questions for Ms. McMahon? The D variances, the C variances?
I don't see any at this time.
Very good.
Thank you.
That's all I have. I know we're going to hear from your consultants, but that concludes our presentation.
Okay. Mr. Williams, would you like to go first?
Do you want Jeff to go, or do you want to wait till after? You're going to have the traffic consultant?
What's the pleasure of the board as far as,
I think we should wait till we hear all the testimony. That's my opinion.
okay. I'm okay with that.
May I make some comments, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
Thank you. We've heard a lot of testimony tonight, or woven throughout the testimony, the fact that a lot of the waivers, design waivers and variances that they're asking for and relief from the conditional use requirements were approved by a prior board. And that was 3 years ago. At least 4 and perhaps 5 of the current board members were not here 3 years ago. So to presume that those 4 or 5 members are going to be supportive of those variances and design waivers, to me, is a real stretch.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
I don't think we have that presumption that you're going to do so, but I'm going to mark this as Exhibit A7. We just wanted to note to the board that this is an approved development,
I understand that.
and it could be built, okay, if we chose to. And what we're saying is that the plan that we're now offering you is a better design alternative than what is currently in approval and could be built on the site today. And I think that's an appropriate planning consideration for the board. It certainly doesn't require you to grant the variances for what we've marked as A3. But we did want to show you what the extent of the deviation is, and that there's substantially more building area that is an approval off record right now that could be constructed by the applicant. We didn't know who the tenants were going to be back in 2017 with what we've marked as A7. We now have 2 tenants that have been signed up. They're ready to move in. They want to move in as quickly as possible to allow for the continued build out of the shopping center. So we're not being presumptuous. We understand this is a new application for development, but we believe it's an appropriate comparison so you can understand that this, we believe, A3 is a better development plan than what this board, albeit different members, approved on A7.
Just a few more comments, if I may. And these next couple are primarily directed to your traffic consultant. I still have, I guess, some concern about the stacking area length. I know you've satisfied code requirements at 12 vehicles. That's also what you can build on site without having disruption to the traffic flow throughout the site. I would really like to see some, again, as I refer to it, and I've always been a big proponent of this, of what I call real-time data. There's plenty of Starbucks out there. There ought to be Starbucks in close enough proximity between where your traffic consultant is coming from and what's over in this area, that he ought to be able to get some good, reliable data relative to a realistic stacking requirement. Maybe it is 12, maybe it's not 12, but I think I would like to have some more testimony supporting that 12 is sufficient. Next, obviously, again, and as part, and I'm sure your traffic consultant would be ready to do this, as part of his testimony, we'd want to hear, what he found relative to the traffic counts, obviously, especially the turning movements in and out of this site via those 2 driveways that we heard a lot of testimony about tonight. A level of service comparison between, what the existing conditions would be and then what the build conditions would be, assuming these 2 sites would get approved. And then finally, the last comment I have to make, and I guess hearing Ms. McManus' testimony, and she certainly, I will say, she certainly does a commendable job offering her testimony, but what occurred to me was, what would this site look like if it were a conforming site? If the conditional uses were met and all the variances and design waivers that went away, what would this site look like? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Kokenauer. Any other board members have comments they wish to offer at this time? It's my impression that we're not in a position to move forward this evening with the township testimony until we hear from your traffic consultant. I understand there's a possibility of scheduling issues on the 14th. However, Mr. Whitmore and Ms. McManus's testimony is on the record. I believe our questions are more geared towards the traffic consultant. Township staff may have questions for the traffic consultant, so,
Ken, since my
yes,
is
go ahead.
here, and some of the issues raised in the municipal consultant reports relate to civil engineering, can we review those comments this evening?
Certainly. We're still on the clock.
And then, if there's any remaining issues in the memos that relate to traffic, when we come back, we can limit the testimony to just traffic, assuming that's acceptable to the board.
Engineering comments that aren't traffic, I don't know, until we hear from the concerns of the township, and it's my understanding they would be more comfortable testifying once your traffic consultant has testified.
Well, that's fine, except that my civil engineer may not be here. So if civil engineering comments come up, I can't rely on my traffic engineer to respond to those.
Do we have any Mr. Williams?
Yes,
You-
if
you-
there's any concern, I have my memorandum.
Okay.
If there's something in particular that they question, they agree or disagree with, then maybe that's what we can discuss. If they agree to everything,
Okay.
then there's nothing more to discuss. on it.
We'll go to Mr. Williams' memo, and if you'd like to address his concerns this evening, we
So
can
the
do
last one we
that.
have is dated February 20th, is that right, Rich?
Yeah, February 20, 2020 is the memorandum.
So I talked to
All
my
right,
engineer.
wait a minute.
and
Let
we
me,
can-
let me find that in our packet. So far, I see Mr. Poppert, a lot of Mr. Poppert. Okay, I have Mr. Williams, February 20th, 2020. So if you want to go through and address his comments, we will be happy to listen to that.
I mean, is there anything you have questions on?
No, I just want to make sure Mr. Whitmore can confirm we can agree to all of those comments raised as a condition of any approval granted?
I do, or I do have one clarification question on, I guess as it relates to the proposed angled parking.
That's the one I have circled.
Correct, the angle parking is, the depth is not to standard, as well as you already testified that the drive aisle. So now, if you're going to remove those parallel parking spaces, maybe you might want to look at, you're not moving them?
You're not going to move the parallel parking.
Okay. Well, see, the depths of the aisles are not according to standard as well as the drive aisle, so I do have a concern about that. What we can do, I don't have no idea. And then you understand about the yellow striping, and we understand all that, that's good. And then, you know about the, on the next page, page 3, under hydraulic, number 2, the attachment D, the major development, that's part of the stormwater regulations. And then, of course, you know about the maintenance, and you're going to de-restrict it, and all that, okay?
Yes.
I really don't have really much, unless you have any other questions or concerns, but,
No, we take no objection.
okay, then.
So is that a waiver from the angled parking, just so we need to provide testimony on that? Or is that just,
I think, I personally think you're going to have problems. It's going to be very tight. It's going to be very difficult to back out, and you're going to have issues with the parallel parking.
Now-
Especially if you're off, I see, probably about 3 feet, so.
Now, I mean, I think we could certainly offer turning templates showing, both the, access to parallel parking stalls and then vehicles backing out, showing that the appropriate,
Do you have room on the sidewalk that you can actually move further in for the sidewalk? And how wide is the sidewalk? I thought it was like 6 feet or 8 feet?
Where you
The sidewalk, along here, on the sidewalk.
No.
So you use more of that space to give yourself more depth?
Up by the buildings, less than 3 feet.
Yeah, I mean,
What is the depth of
those,
those,
the parked cars to the building?
what is the depth of those parallel parking, please?
9 feet wide.
Looks like 9, yeah.
That aisle width is what, 15 feet?
Oh, for the aisle, drive aisle? Drive aisle for that is supposed to be, I think it's 18 feet.
18, but it's 15 proposed, correct?
Right.
And what is the angle of that angle parking? Looks like 60?
Should be 21.
And they're proposing
I share
18?
your concern on that, Rich.
So, I mean, I think it's a little tight, but
And is there any restrictions of the types of vehicles that are parking there? I mean,
that's normal smart cars.
Customer traffic.
Yeah, so I mean,
but I mean, if you get obviously, you're not going to get a tractor trailer in there now, but a box truck, or if they park in there, and they're not restricted from parking in there, right?
Navigator?
Yeah.
The only thing that's restricted is our
12-passenger
handicap.
van.
so the actual box, the dimension box that will, enough, that will not overflow or encumber the actual drive aisle, or won't overhang the curb, that box is a 9 by 18 stall.
So anything over 18 feet long would be out into the drive aisle and could cause, I mean, would they have enough turning radius to, if there were a car parked in a parallel spot, to back out of those angled parking?
And that's
If they
what
were over 18
That's what I
feet.
suggested as a possibility on a revised plan, provide the associated, for instance, showing the vehicle,
Okay.
the vehicle turning, the associated movements getting, in that situation where cars are parked in parallel stalls, pulling in and out of the angled parking stalls.
So Rich, you believe that's going to be tight for the cars that are parallel parked?
Correct. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
If there's somebody parked there.
Parallel, one backing out,
Yeah.
would be very close.
If I may just share with the board, in my experience, I work for other municipalities as their traffic consultant, and the minimum aisle width I've seen for a 60-degree parking angle is 18 feet. Some of them run as high as 21. And if you look at the Institute of Transportation Engineers recommendation for angle parking, for a 60-degree parking angle, they're generally around 20 to 21 feet.
So do you find this waiver request considerable?
Yes, I do. As a traffic engineer, I do, yes. And I'm not testifying, I'm just,
Right.
I guess I'll say, a fact witness right now, or based on my experience. Yes, I do.
Do we have any other restaurant or a situation like this in Hamilton that meets what they're requesting?
I cannot think of any that we have angle parking as well as parallel behind it. I know the only other place that has angle, but not, or has parallel is Walmart.
Walmart has parallel parking, but it's not angle parking opposite it,
What
straight in.
looks like this visually is the Yardville Dunkin' Donuts.
That's a disaster.
Oh, yes, yes,
So I
that's correct.
can elaborate more.
Down there.
But I'm not saying this
You're right, I forgot
disaster.
about that.
The stacking interferes with the angled parking. Everything interferes with each other. Now,
I've parked in
Dunkin'
the
Donuts'
angled
biggest
parking,
issue is
and I
they don't
sit
have enough
there
stacking. I mean, every
Right.
time
In the morning.
Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts comes into town, we will always say, get as much as you physically can get. Dunkin' Donuts on 130, I think they ended up with 15. I would say, well, that's probably not enough. But you know what? With certain uses, you know you need more than 10.
Well, we have the one on 33, which backs up onto
That's an
33.
older development. I've seen them stacking in the shoulder of 33.
Yeah, I have two.
Uses like Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks, you know what you're going to get, it's more than what the minimum is required.
So if those three parallel parkings were gone, can they be put somewhere else?
But they'd have to go to the overflow, because I don't think there's any place else on that plan to put those 3 spots. Not to step on your toes, I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore.
That's why I'm suggesting they try to accumulate stacking, data, parking data for uses like this, so maybe it'll help us make a better decision.
I know the Yardville Dunkin' Donuts, I've had to sit in the in the angle parking.
And you couldn't get out
Because I
because of the
couldn't get out
stacking.
because the stacking was behind me, and there was parallel park behind, on the other side of the stacking.
So let me ask the question while we're at it, so maybe if it is some type of resolution, just parallel parking, what's the reason you need it besides the fact that you're deficient on your parking? What if you eliminate them?
That's the reason.
So you're short 3. You're short 3 spots, right?
And that kind of goes
We're
away.
already short 29.
Well,
so
right,
that-
right.
Taking those, I would make them short 32.
But I mean, these are essentially purely for the convenience of patrons of the restaurants. I mean, these are not located along the main access drives, like the Yardville Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, yeah.
You know, purely the only people who are going to be accessing these parking stalls are going to be the people who are going to park there. It's not a through area, it's not connected to a drive-through, and in my opinion, that's what, you know, it makes the, separation and a different circumstance from the Yardville, and in this
Right.
case, an appropriate and reasonable location for the angled and the parallel parking.
This might just be one of the few times where I think myself or Rich is referring to not worrying too much about convenience and tenants, more or less just conflicts and design. So my original suggestion was to remove them, not relocate, because I thought there was going to be an issue. I'm hearing from people that know a lot more than me that they probably think the same, so maybe I was onto something. That's just, I'm not saying that because Dunkin' Donuts is an issue. That was my gut feeling. And I'm not even close to anybody here or their
Your
experience.
traffic consultant could provide the turning radiuses, or would that be something from you, Mr.
That would
Whitmore,
be something that we would provide,
from the engineering standpoint?
from the engineering standpoint.
Mr. Kokenauer?
I hate to tell you that, when you do it, if you're going to do it, provide the turning, make sure you show those turns being made with a car parked on either side of them. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's going to demonstrate the
Worst case
I
scenario.
know it may seem very obvious, but I've seen people provide the turning movements, and I said, well, anybody could do that, sure, because I can sheet and cut through half the other space to get out, so, thank you.
Can we do a scenario where you have parallel cars parallel park and then,
That's, I
That's-
believe what Mr. Whitmore's
that's
going
the
to
same
show.
thing you're asking.
The
Okay.
worst-case scenario, cars
Okay.
parked there, cars all parked in the parallel, and then what the turning radius is.
We have this neat little program we use, they're called turning movement templates, and you can take a passenger car or probably even different sizes of passenger cars, and actually show them turning out of a 60-degree parking stall with parallel parking or something behind them into a 15-foot wide aisle.
Mr. Harrison, you have a question?
Yeah, to that point, tonight, we didn't discuss fire access at all yet.
No, we haven't talked, and I don't know, was there a review by the, I guess this is Mercerville Fire District?
I believe so, yeah, District 2, pretty sure.
District 2, yeah.
As far as the turning radiuses go, it looks like it's going to be pretty tight for engines around the site, around the buildings. I don't see any no parking areas for fire access or...
Yeah, are there any fire lanes on there? I don't see any.
No, I mean, due to the pad nature of, you know, of the layout and the buildings, there are no restrictive fire lanes. I mean, if you would want to consider this a fire lane, however, it's not striped, it's not signed as such. However, you know, there is access to the full pad area. You know, you provide the associated truck turning movements for the fire trucks,
yes.
even as much as a WD-50,
Right.
you know, tractor trailer. So, I mean, they do have full access to the rear and the front of the pad areas, so it falls within that 150-foot, you know, hose length to, you know, provide the necessary emergency access to the building.
Thank you. Any other questions for engineering? Okay, I believe at this point we were going to adjourn until unless you have, we're not going to hear from the township until we hear from traffic consultant.
It might be beneficial to get Mr. Popper's comments, just so we can take them back and...
That's fine.
Be able to
We can
address
do that.
everything
We can do that.
at the next meeting.
Mr. Popper,
Yes.
okay, would you like to go over your comments so that they can address those for the next meeting?
Well, what I would say is, which comments would you like to go over? Now, the only thing I'd preface is, a lot of the architects' comments were left in limbo for tonight, and there was a lot of, well, the plans submitted are updated, more revised versus what I have, so that goes into play with both buildings and signage. So, you know, in a perfect world, I'd like to revise the memo between now and the next meeting to clean up a lot of that, because that's just a lot of, that's not even highlight stuff, that's just belaboring little points here and there, but if there was something specific that needed to be addressed,
Mr. Davis, do you have anything
besides that, I
specific?
guess, you know, feel free.
I know we went over the architecture. I know there was a comment raised, and Proctor and I had an opportunity to talk about the metal facade on First Watch. And I would just like to know, is the board generally comfortable with the architectural design of First Watch? Do we have to do anything else in order to address the facade?
I think our only concern was how the sign does, but that's something between the applicant and you and the applicant to make their signage better. They don't, you know, I don't think there's an issue with the signage from the board members or the architectural finish. I mean, it's the standard Starbucks colors. I'm not familiar, again, with First Watch, but I'm assuming they're their corporate colors, and as long as the township has no objections to the colors, we certainly don't either.
Great. Just wanted to know if I needed to do anything further on architecture between now and the next hearing.
I don't believe so for the
Well,
board.
besides the revised plans, I would need a chance to go through them so I can hopefully trim down my comments a little bit.
The ones that we presented tonight?
Right. Well, plus, if the bronze metal siding, I mean, I tried looking some stuff up, I can't find anything. I looked at Store and Cherry Hill, but that's all, EFS and the hardy plank and the cultured stone. That was my initial comment, is it like the one in Cherry Hill? It seems like it's really not. And the one in Cherry Hill's got white, letters on the sign against a dark brown background, so. The little letters underneath, I was in the site, I got a photo, it's, I don't know, I can see it, but I don't know how fast you're gonna see it from the street.
Yeah. And again, that's just more of a business decision on the applicant's part than it is a zoning decision as far as the color of the signs and
Now, is
as long as
what
they're
was
okay.
sent around on 11 by 17, I know it's never a true representation of colors because of how it prints. Now, would the original drawing be more accurate if it was something that was emailed? Because I know things that print to a color, you know, it's a shade of brown, but it'll print, you know, dark and look totally different.
I can send you a high-resolution PDF.
I mean, what I'd love to see is if there's an exact building that was built somewhere else or has components of which you want to use. That's why I looked at Cherry Hill. That's the only freestanding building I found in New Jersey. I'd love to go to yours, but
I'm going down there tomorrow.
I'll be in Orlando in 2 weeks
All right,
before the
yeah.
next meeting.
Take pictures. I will.
you
Yeah,
know what,
good
if
point. Yeah,
Google
good
Street
point.
View or whatever gets me down there, I'll look at those and see.
I don't know that they're similar to those restaurants that you bought there. But if there's another one that exists similar, we'll submit a photograph, and we will also submit a high-res rendering of what we distributed tonight, so you can see all the colors.
Yeah.
I think we can pretty much agree that the major concerns are with the traffic and the parking. I think as far as architect and landscape and the HVAC stuff and all that's, you know, that's between you and the township to work those details out. As far as from the board standpoint for the use variance, Ms. McManus did, her job is proving the positive, criteria, but I believe the hangup is the traffic and the parking. So I think that's where you need to concentrate, moving forward, is addressing those parallel parking spots, going back to your client and talking to them about how comfortable they would be. If they come back, if you go back and say they're removed, I think that somewhat eliminates one concern. I think there's still a concern over the number of spots, although I understand there's a huge parking lot adjacent to the property that is available for overflow parking. So I'm not so concerned over the number of spots on the pad site. I'm more concerned about that drive-through aisle with that parallel parking and that 60-degree angle parking is more of a concern, you know, from my stand. And I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm not too concerned over the number of parking spots personally.
Should we be concerned about the employee parking location?
Again, that's something that the applicant, the owner of the two establishments is going to have to work out with their employees. I don't think it's within our purview to enforce or force them to make their employees park in the overflow parking, not on the pad site. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, it's an enforcement issue. The landlord owner would have more control over it than the board or the township.
I mean, that's not uncommon. It's come up many times to both boards in the past, where if there's concerns with that, and you suggest dedicating areas for employee only, there's applications where it's been signed employee parking.
Yeah, as
I've not run into a lot of objection where it says, no, we don't want to sign it or recommend somebody park furthest away.
Well, it's in our experience that it's preferable not to sign it, because then if you have a customer, they're going to pass by that parking space that would have to be open. I think it's in both tenants' interests to keep the parking closest to the building available for their customers.
Yeah, and I think that's...
Absolutely.
I think they would do that with their employees. I know other establishments and other shopping centers, businesses, they do the same thing with their employees, but that's certainly, again, that's nothing we can impose. I don't believe it's something that the landlord would have to use common sense.
So it sounds to me like the board is satisfied with all the engineering testimony, all the planning testimony on the D variances. The remaining issues relate to the parking configuration issues in the center of the buildings and parking variance overall, as well as traffic comments. So when the application is adjourned, these witnesses will not have to appear again?
I don't believe they would. I mean, we've heard you've addressed some of the concerns from Mr. Poppert and Mr. Williams, and as Mr. Poppert said, with the revised plans, his comments will be down to probably only 10 pages instead of 20.
Is Ms. McManus not available the 12th of April either? Okay, I just want...
That's spring
Okay.
break. Well, not for this township, it's not spring break, it's the week after spring break for this township.
It's 11
It's the
pages.
14th of April,
Yeah.
May 12th.
Pardon?
It's April 14th and then May 12th.
Right,
Those are the
right,
two
okay.
dates.
Yes, April 14th is not spring break here in the township, but it may, as in most normal townships, it is.
Yes.
With the previous application that we've referenced a couple times tonight, I would assume you got an approval from Mercer County?
Yes.
Was it a conditional approval? Do you know? It was not?
It was, but I think we're satisfied.
Okay, but if it was, you probably satisfied it. I guess my question to you is, have you had, you will have to go back before the county again
We have their approval
for this site,
for the amended.
Okay, well, that's, okay, that's good to know.
They had two opportunities to review the application, and
And it was just, they've gone ahead and approved it without any conditions or anything?
that's correct.
Okay,
It's straight approval.
okay, thank you.
What did they approve?
The amended site plan application.
The access to slum.
The access to
So
slums.
they didn't insist on the no left turn, no restrictions
Come on,
on
that's the
turning or
county.
anything. Yeah, well,
Look at
that's
this.
true. Mercer County.
Leave us.
It'll be like, it'll end up like Wawa, eventually there'll be a sign put on the post that says no left turn.
No, we have to look after the residents.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I know it's a regulatory issue that we can't enforce. Again, it's a county road. I mean, I don't believe we can make that a condition of approval.
It's a county road.
Are you saying we wouldn't be able to mandate or request a no left turn?
We can request a no, we can ask the township to request a no left turn from the county. Doesn't guarantee the county would say yes. I don't believe it's within our purview to mandate a no left turn to the county.
If we end
I
up
think we
having-
could,
So if we end up having accidents, a fatal or something, that's the county, that's...
It's on the
all
county.
County road.
County road. Both are, Quaker Bridge and Sloan are both county
But we
roads.
can make a good argument why a left-hand turn between these towns would not be permitted.
New Jersey, we don't make left turns. If you want to turn left, you got to turn right.
at the risk of beating a dead horse on this, so, Bob, couldn't we make a condition of approval that the applicant would have to go back and at least request, that, and then we give a definitive answer?
Hours that you're concerned about, or just a
Well,
blanket no left?
And the other thing I was thinking of, and this is really more a question I can address to your traffic consultant, but they have this application now, it's called Do Not Block the Box, where you go out and you paint these, crosshatch lines, and, I'm not convinced they're overly effective.
Inevitably pull out into the far right lane trying to make the left turn because nothing's coming and...
Well, that's true. I mean, but I think we could at least have them go back and ask some questions, and then we get a definitive answer, one way or the other.
County engineer. What's his name? Retired.
George Fowlett is not a county engineer. George is actually a traffic engineer.
So,
We might have some sympathy.
so may I ask
Yes, you may.
for the board to vote only on the D variances we've requested and adjourn the preliminary major site plan to April 14th, so we don't have to provide additional notice. And then I'll discuss with my client whether they want to have another attorney be present with our traffic consultant. If not, I might ask you to make an announcement on the 14th to carry it again to May 12th, so we can all meet. So that
Yeah, I'm not getting a sense from the board that there's a use variance issue because I believe there's other concerns, the waiver of the site plan approval. I mean, I can't speak for the other board members.
We're not asking for a waiver of site plan, we're asking for certain...
Approval of the site plan, right?
Yeah, I didn't ask for that, though. I just
Yeah,
asked
right.
for a vote on the D variance for the FAR and for the conditional use standards, and then defer on the site plan approval, and we'll come back. Under the law, you are permitted to bifurcate applications.
Yes.
You're permitted to proceed only with D variance relief, and then come back on a site plan approval later. So my only request is, since we have 6 members here tonight, if the board is so inclined, to vote on the D variances, hopefully receive approval on that, and then come back on the site plan approval where we can deal with the traffic issues, because the traffic issues relate to the site plan portion of the application.
Mr. Chairman, as one voting member of this board, I am not inclined to vote on anything tonight until we get the traffic
I was
testimony.
just going to poll the board to see what your feelings are. Mr. Harrison?
I'd rather wait for the traffic.
Mr. Gerson?
Myself included.
Mr. Sadworny?
I vote to wait until we hear from the traffic.
I want to see the whole package.
Okay. So if that's the case, can we make an announcement tonight, even though nobody is here from the public, that the application will be adjourned to April 14th?
It'll be carried to April 14th. No further notice will be required.
Great. And then, is there any objection if we want to move it again to May, to make another announcement in April?
Well, we would do it at the April meeting if it had to be carried to May.
Very good.
We would still not need further notice? Although, no, it says we have to act by May.
Well, the
May
applicant
8th, yeah.
could consent to a waiver of the time period of automatic approval, which I'm sure they would.
Yes.
Okay? I don't think that's a concern. It's just a matter of all the public that's here to make sure that they're notified. At this point, it's April 14th. If need be, on April 14th, we can make a further notice that it's carried to the May meeting.
Very
And I
good.
guess until, you'll provide tapes for Mr. Angelico and Mr. Hewitson? I don't know. Because if it is carried to May 12th, then we'll need one of those to fill in for me.
Well, if the absent member could listen to the tapes between now
Yeah,
and April, that would be helpful.
Sabrina will provide Mr. Angelico with it.
Great.
That'll give us at least 7 for
Seven,
April
great.
14th.
Okay.
And we can go from there.
Keep the exhibits, leave the exhibits? You have a preference?
I guess whatever's marked, just leave here for now.
Okay, so they'll be available at the next hearing?
Yeah.
Very good. And we
Okay.
will provide the additional information that Mr. Poppert requested on the architectural.
At this point, we will carry application 0200133 to the April 14th regular meeting. No further notice is required by the applicant. With that, I move we adjourn.
So, second.
Aye.
Aye.